Here we go on a Wednesday edition of the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN Radio, the free 97.3 ESPN mobile app, live video on our YouTube channel. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Josh Edding producing today's show. You out there, what's up, everybody? The Wednesday edition kind of gets us, as they call it, the hump day, over the hump. We get from the result of the Falcons game in the rear view, and we start to look ahead to the San Francisco 49ers, who many people would suggest are a better football team than the Philadelphia Eagles are. I don't have a lot of dispute on that. I like the 49ers this year. They're my pick to win the West. If you listen to yesterday's Who's In, Who's Out, I have San Francisco winning the West. We'll break down the matchup. We'll start to take a look at it. Jason Fitz later on. Jeff Mosher, football at 4. My NFL Find 5, Ugly 5, 5 best, 5 worst teams in the NFL. That's later today. The professor, John Clayton, is here, plus Jeff Kerr tonight in the 5 o'clock hour. We got a good show planned for you, but we always invite you to jump on board. A lot of ways to do it. You can hit us up on the text board at 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. That's one way. You can, of course, download the free mobile app, and you can message us through the app. The app is easy to do. You can get it in the Apple Store or Google Play and message us through the app. We'll read off some of your messages through the app. And, of course, if you are one of the people who watch the show live on Facebook, on YouTube, you can message us in the comment section on our YouTube channel. I think this matchup is quite intriguing. The 49ers have a couple of injuries that I don't know how much they impact this game so much. I don't know that they impact this game greatly, but I will say this. Philadelphia did win the game out there last year, so they do have that kind of hanging over them. The fact that they went out there last year and they did beat the San Francisco 49ers in their building. Now, San Francisco, of course, has to travel across the country and come to Philadelphia and play, which will have fans for the first time really in 2 seasons. I mean, they had fans for a handful of games last year, but they only really had a handful of games or a handful of fans in those games. But if you go back to the game that Philadelphia played last year, obviously there's a lot of new faces here. Carson Wentz was the quarterback versus Nick Mullins, a big difference in the 2 signal callers this year. It will be Jalen Hurts and it will be Jimmy Garoppolo with a little bit of Trey Lance maybe mixed in. I think Lance played. How many snaps did Lance get on Sunday for the 49ers? He wasn't a huge factor in the game, but I guess he does exist in the game. Miles Sanders was the Eagles' leading rusher last year. Jerick McKinnon was the big running back for the 49ers. He had 14 carries for 54 yards. The big guy in the game last year, he's the same, and that's why this is interesting. I talked about George Kittle and the matchup George Kittle brings to the table for the San Francisco 49ers. In the game last year, George Kittle whipped the Philadelphia Eagles defense for 15 catches and 183 yards. Well, guess what? They're not much better defensively than they were a season ago at that position on who's defending George Kittle. Now, in that game last year, you had Nathan Gary playing in that game a lot, and they found Nate Gary, and they picked on him all day long. Nate Gary's not here. By the way, Trey Lance had 4 offensive snaps. I believe one resulted into a touchdown pass. So he has a little bit of a playbook for them. But the guy is Kittle. Deebo Samuel last year played in the game. The Eagles kind of kept him at bay. Brandon Ayuk played in the game last year. He had that one play where he ran and jumped up over somebody for a touchdown. It was a 38-yard run. That play, Ayuk isn't even really that big of a factor in week 1 for them anyway. It was Kittle. Kittle kicked the Eagles' butt last year. For Philadelphia, though, look at the guys they won the game with. They scored 25 points in the game at San Francisco. Now, one of them was an interception return by Alex Singleton. But Travis Fulgham, you remember the touchdown catch that he had? He's not on the team anymore. Greg Ward had 4 catches in the game. He barely stepped on the field on Sunday. Richard Rodgers was the leading tight end receiver. He had 3 catches because if you remember, Dallas Goedert did not play in that game. He got hurt in the Week 1 win against the Washington football team last year. If you look at the defense for the Eagles in that game, Rodney McLeod, who likely won't play, he was the leading tackler. Nate Geary, he was the next leading tackler. He's gone. Marcus Epps most likely won't play with a concussion. Kervon LeBlanc, he's no longer here. Duke Riley, he's no longer here. Jalen Mills, he's no longer here. Nicole Roby-Coleman, he's no longer here. So the guys who were a factor in the game for Philadelphia, most of them have been upgraded. And for the 49ers, if you look at their side of the ball, a lot of their names are the same, but different in certain areas. You know, the injuries that team had last year crippled them. But in the game that Philadelphia played them, they had a lot of guys missing up front on the defensive side of the ball. And that's where the 49ers really got hurt last year. Bosa was not there. You know, that's a big factor in this game. How big of a factor is Bosa in this game? Well, we're about to find out if Jordan Mailata earns that money or not, right? We're going to find out if Jordan Mailata is worth every penny because he's going to have maybe the best pass rusher in football lined up across from him. And if Jordan Mailata can go toe-to-toe with Bosa, then you say to yourself, all right, we think we have something at that left tackle spot that we can kind of build off of, and the rest of the line we know. Isaac Seumalo, Pro Football Focus rated him as the number 1 guard in football last week for his game against the Falcons, right? Number 2, Jason Kelce was just an absolute beast in the game. I went back and watched Kelce and some of the things that he did. Man, he had an excellent game. Kelce was vintage Kelce. You know, there were times last year where we kind of questioned whether Kelce still had it. He was the only guy on the line that was healthy all season long. Well, he definitely had it in the game against the Falcons on Sunday. Kelce, I thought, had one of his better games in some time. He looked healthy, right? He looked healthy. That was the difference. He looked like a guy. Remember last year he had the injury that he kind of played with all season long. I think he had like an injury to his elbow that kind of slowed him down. But if you look at the Eagles, their offensive line grades, Isaac Seumalo was the second highest graded pass blocking offensive lineman in all of football, but he was the highest among all guards. The second highest pass blocking offensive lineman, period, in guards and centers and tackles. He was the number 1 guard in all of football. So the guy who you look at on the Eagles offensive line is maybe the weakest link, Isaac Seumalo. He had the best day of the linemen. So this offensive line has a huge different challenge on their hand. By the way, Jordan Mailata, he was the 7th highest rated left tackle in football, according to Pro Football Focus, for his first week against the Atlanta Falcons. But this is, I think, to me, you know, the story of this week is, quite frankly, the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line up against the San Francisco pass rush, right? The San Francisco pass rush is probably talent-wise, right? We talked about teams that blitz and didn't blitz. San Francisco, Philadelphia blitzed the 3rd least amount of times in all of football. Now, they played the Detroit Lions last week, who do not have a very good offensive line. But in that game, you take a look at pass rushing, and the one area where they got to the quarterback, they had 3 sacks in the game. They hit Jared Goff 9 times. They had 9 quarterback hits in the game. Nick Bosa, sack, 3 tackles for loss, 2 quarterbacks hits. The sacks came from Bosa, Street, and D. Ford. So they get a secondary one. Ford had 2 quarterback hits. Street had 2 quarterback hits. Bosa had 2 quarterback hits. So they were coming from all over the place. Armstead, another highly talented player for them. The 3 sacks and 9 quarterback hits. It gives you a little bit of an indication of what kind of pass rush you're about to see. But the one guy who's really a problem is Fred Warner. Warner, in today's game, where the linebacker doesn't get a lot of headlines, it's not like, if Fred Warner was Mike Singletary, think about it like in those terms. Like, he is that level of outstanding linebacker. The days of Mike Singletary playing linebacker, just absolutely taking over the field in the middle, eyes lit up, looking all over the place. Warner's kind of that guy in today's game. And he had a tremendous game. Now, the question is, I love this matchup because Warner's probably the best linebacker right now in football. Probably, if you want to say top 3 or 4, okay? I like Warner a lot. But the area where Philadelphia excels, of course, is where? The offensive line. So this matchup with Warner as the quarterback of their defense, Bosa, Armstead, up against the 2 guys in Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. There's so many intriguing matchups in this because, I think San Francisco, without question, is the better football team here. I think they're just a better team. Look, this is a team that went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Now, that being said, Philadelphia went to the Super Bowl, and then 2 years after their Super Bowl team, they weren't very good. They went to the playoffs, but they were a declining team. Just because San Francisco went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, it doesn't mean they're automatically this great team. The problem is they were a young team when they went to the Super Bowl. Philadelphia was more of an aging team when they got to the Super Bowl. Like, they had a bunch of guys who just had kind of either just hit their primes or were just on the back end of their prime. San Francisco went to the Super Bowl with a lot of younger, talented players on that defensive side of the ball. Armstead, Kinlaw, Jones, Bosa, Warner. The one loss they have in Verrett, now he is a guy who has been hurt a lot. I think he played in the game against Philadelphia last year. But where's the area of strength for them? It's up front. Where's the area of strength for Philadelphia? It's up front. So that's really the key matchup to start off with this week. I think when you look at, all right, last week, Philadelphia had a clear advantage up front. Defensive line of the Falcons, not their strong suit. Philadelphia's offensive line, definitely a strong suit. So if you said on Wednesday, give me something that stands out, the Eagles' offensive line against their defensive line, that to me was a clear victory. This week, not as clear, right? That's not as clear. Their defensive line is one of the best. Your offensive line is one of the best. So it kind of cancels itself out. So where do you get the advantage in this game? Or do they have all the clear advantages? That, to me, is what you kind of break down this week when you're trying to look at this one. So I think this is a very cool matchup with a battle of 2 teams that had high expectations last year, both of which failed miserably due to what? Injury for them. Was it because of injury for Philadelphia? I think we're finding out. If their offensive line's healthy last year, are they a better football team? Deshaun Jackson's, all these guys get hurt. Who knows how different the season would have gone for both of these teams? I think San Francisco had the most games lost due to injury in NFL history last year. And they weren't just random dudes. They were pretty key players for that team. They were just losing guy after guy. Now, it's already started for them. Jason Verrett, injury reserved, out for the season. Raheem Mostert, running back, injury reserved. He is out for the season. So you have 2 starters already missing from the San Francisco 49ers. Elijah Mitchell will be the running back most likely this week. I think you'll see Trey Sermon, who was inactive in week 1. I think you'll see him active this week and possibly have a role. I'm very intrigued by what they'll do with Brandon Ayuk, who did not play very much last week at all. Deebo Samuel is a big weapon for them. He had a monster week number 1. So they have a lot more things that concern you. Most of the concern should, though, come from where Atlanta was really poor, and that's up front. Right? That's up front. You look at the rankings up front of the offensive line, Atlanta is towards the bottom, and San Francisco is going to be more towards the top. I think this offensive line is one of the better offensive lines in football. And there's a reason why you look at the week 1 offensive line rankings or the entering the season offensive line rankings. The Atlanta Falcons last week, they came in at number 24. They were one of the worst offensive lines in football. Not the case with this team. They've got, I said last week, I think Atlanta has really 2 guys that kind of are starting players on most teams in the league. Like when you look at the Eagles offensive line, all 5 of those guys would likely start on almost every single team in football. Lane Johnson's going to start everywhere. Brandon Brooks is going to start everywhere. Kelsey's going to start everywhere. Sayamala is going to start pretty much on at least more than half the teams. And I would believe Mailata would start on every team once, he kind of shows out. Maybe not right off the bat. Who knows? He got that monster deal. But when you look at offensive line play and you say, all right, give me a couple of teams that stand out, Philadelphia would be on that list. I think that San Francisco's on that list. So last week, the 2 areas where I thought Philadelphia had a clear advantage was on the offensive line and on the defensive line. I don't think they have those clear advantages this week. At least not today. At least not now. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. It's the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. You can download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. You can message us through the app. You can text us on the text board. Again, 609-403-0973. If you're watching the show live on YouTube and Twitter, you can message us in the comments section, and we will get to all of those throughout the day. We always like to hear from you guys out there, good, bad, indifferent. As long as you're listening, as long as you're watching, we always appreciate you. And we're going to make you a bigger part of the show each and every day. We want you to keep on texting in, keep on messaging us, keep on commenting, and keep them coming, keep them coming, keep them coming. Because the Eagles playing the San Francisco 49ers this week in Philadelphia. Now, I mentioned the San Francisco offensive line. Trent Williams, boom, right off the bat there. The Eagles front 4 or 7, if you will, with the rotation of guys that they kind of bring in there. They are going to have a much different battle this week. Trent Williams, who I guess you can make an argument, right, that he might be the best offensive line left tackle in the NFL. Josh says, sure. Okay, you're okay with my comment there. That was an easy sell. Josh liked him. All right, so I would say Trent Williams. You can make a strong argument that he might be the best left tackle in football.
My reaction was apart because I love Cowboy fan who loves to say that Tyron Smith is. And I always point to them how many games Tyron Smith has not played in the last few years due to injury.
Well, Trent Williams, he missed all of 2019 as well, but he did play last season.
But overall, Williams has played more games.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and real quick, Trent Williams, to me, could be the best left tackle in football. I mean, I'm not here to say that he's number 1, 2, or 3. He's one of the. They also have McGlinchey at right tackle, and he's another one. He's like the John Runyon of today's league. He doesn't get the Pro Bowls or the All-Pro. He's just a tough guy, and I think in terms of run blocking, Mike McGlinchey is one of the best right tackles. So their 2 tackles are very good. Now, McGlinchey, where he is a little weaker, is he's not a great pass blocker. He's a little slower. So the Eagles could possibly get a little bit of Brandon Graham against McGlinchey maybe there. But Trent Williams on the other side, he allowed only 19 pressures in 562 attempts last year. So the Sweat Barnett side of things might have a tougher day. Laken Tomlinson, he is coming off of his best season last year. Okay, so he is another guy who is a road grading run blocker. So their left side with Williams and Tomlinson, you're going to have a much tougher day than you did last week against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the other guard spot is a little bit of a question mark. So, is that where you can get the double on Fletcher Cox and have Javon Hargrave get a lot of one-on-ones again? And then, of course, Alec Mack, who is, one of the better centers in the league. He's a very good run blocker. So, really, they only have. Last week, I said Atlanta had maybe 2 bona fide starters that start almost everywhere. I would say San Francisco has 4.
Yes. There are definitely 4 guys on the 49ers who would start on other NFL teams for sure.
Yeah. I think they have 4 NFL quality starting players. Atlanta, I gave 2 to last week. I think 4 is the number this week for San Francisco. And look, each week you're going to have to kind of open up looking at that because Philadelphia's 2 strengths are their lines until injury starts to creep in here. So check mark on the offensive line, probably about equal. Check mark on the defensive line, I would probably say San Francisco is a little better. But the question is, their offensive line against your defensive line. I'd probably take their offensive line in that battle a little bit. I think I like them in that battle a little bit. Their defensive line against your offensive line. That one's going to be pretty interesting because you know why? Jordan Mailata is such an unknown in a game like this. Now, what has Adam Kaplan told us on our show? The 2 games that Mailata really jumped out off the page to the Eagles that made them believe in him was when he got forced into action last year against Baltimore and Pittsburgh. They were 2 veteran teams, and he absolutely stood up in those games, and that is when they kind of believed in him as, hey, we can trust this guy. So this will be interesting. Bosa, Mailata, that matchup, one to watch on Sunday. That's where we start today. Coming up in 20 minutes, Mike McGary from the Press of Atlantic City. He'll give us his thoughts on this matchup between the Eagles and the Niners, plus the Phillies last night. How the hell do you lose again to the Cubs? I know they didn't play the Cubs, but I'm just saying, again, to the Cubs. They lost 3 out of 4 to the freaking Rockies, and then they lose last night. You're back in that game. You have a shot. And something that Joe Girardi said last night makes me scratch my head. It's mind-boggling. I have that and more. Your text messages at 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. The Sports Bash is brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Online, eastcoastroofing.com. We are just getting started. If you're watching the show live, leave us a comment in the comments section, and we'll read those off as well. What's up, B. King? He says, what's up, fellas? Download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play, and you can get the Sports Bash on the go. Message us through the free mobile app. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Seattle. Coming up, something Joe Girardi said last night that has me scratching my head, man. Is he on the hot seat, or is he back for another year? We'll discuss coming up. Sports Bash brought to you by Dell for your small business needs. Call a Dell Technologies advisor today. I'm Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. Follow me there. Download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. Find 5 ugly 5 best 5 worst teams in the NFL coming up tonight here on the Sports Bash. I want to shift over to the Phillies, who lost again last night. Now, the Braves lost too. That kept them 4.5 out. Only 16,170 were announced for a so-called important game last night. Your independent race, they got Bryce Harper, and apparently people have given up on the Phils, which I don't blame them. But that being said, 16,000 people show up to a game in September that has some meaning for them. You have a MVP candidate on your team. But it's something that Joe Girardi said last night. And it's starting to feel very Andy Reid-ish. Now, that's not always a bad thing. I don't hate Andy Reid. I was never an Andy Reid hater. I understand it was time for maybe a change of scenery and time to move on. But Andy Reid used to always say, need to do a better job. Need to do a better job, right? But when you keep saying, I need to do a better job, and you don't do a better job, at that point is when we started to say maybe Andy Reid's message is starting to get a little bit stale to this team. We're starting to feel, or I'm starting to feel the same way about Joe Girardi. Look, a lot of people didn't like Gabe Kapler. The proof is in the pudding. Gabe Kapler's in the playoffs. Joe Girardi keeps talking about the playoffs. And what he said last night is, we're working every day. We're trying to get guys right. We just need to play better. You're working every day? You got 25 games left. Maybe less. Where are they at right now? What are they? Phillies are 72 and 72. So they got 18 games left. You got 18 games left, Joe Girardi. You're working every day. If 144 games into the season, you're still needing to work every day to try to get to where you want to be, you have a problem. Then you're not working good enough. You're not getting the job done. If you're saying we're working every day, we're trying to get guys right, we still have an opportunity here, we just need to play better. That's what he said last night, but that's what he keeps saying. Almost after every single game, it's, well, we're working every day. Well, then you're not doing a good enough job. That's where, if you're saying we're working on things every single day and the proof doesn't show up in the pudding, then that's when it turns back on Joe Girardi. Look, I get it. I said it during the Gabe Kapler era. It wasn't Gabe Kapler's fault. This team wasn't good enough. If you look at their September records, the last 4 seasons, the same thing. They're in the same spot they were with Gabe Kapler as they are now with Joe Girardi. Joe Girardi won a World Series. He was the manager of the year when he was the manager with the Florida Marlins. Right? So this isn't some fly-by-night manager. He had credentials. But those credentials don't give you anything if you don't have the proper bullets in the gun. You could have the nicest arsenal, period. But if you don't have the right ammunition to put in that weapon, it's useless. And the Phillies have Bryce Harper and Zach Wheeler, an MVP candidate, a Cy Young Award candidate. They have those things, right? But just having nice toys sometimes doesn't mean you're going to win with those toys. And the Phillies are a prime example of that right now. They are not ready to win. They are not good enough to win. And Joe Girardi keeps going up there every single night, and he keeps saying, we're trying to get better, and unfortunately, they're not good enough. Late in the year, they had the schedule to get this done. They had the Rockies for 4. They won one. They now have the Cubs here. They lose the first game of this series. They had a chance last night. They're back in that game. They're down 4-0. They get back into the game 3-1. What happens? Freddie Galvis, 4.63 double play. He's facing a reliever who's got an ERA of 6.35. The Chicago Cubs put out a lineup last night that the Jersey Shore Blue Claws probably could have competed with. And yet, Kyle Gibson, who pitched pretty well for about 5 innings, he gives up that big home run. The Phillies are up 1-0. Gibson gives up that homer, then he gives up another home run, and they just couldn't get back into the game. Some guy named Wisdom hits a home run off of you. You know, there's a lot of young players getting an opportunity to show. So I get it. The Cubs, the Rockies, they have young guys that want to show that they belong up here. But when you're a team that wants to make the playoffs, you need to bury those teams. And it's easy to say, hey, look at the schedule coming up for the Phillies. Like, they're going to probably be within striking distance when they play the Braves. Why? Well, if they have any heart left, if they have any amount of heart left, this series with the Cubs takes them to the Mets and then Baltimore and Pittsburgh. They have a chance. They have 12 games coming up with teams that are severely under 500. So you can win 8 out of 12, 9 out of 12. But there is no evidence to support that that can happen. Since winning 2 out of 3 on September 5th, 6th, and 7th, they have lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of their last 7 and 8 out of their last 10. 8 out of 10 they've lost. That's how they enter the month of September. Again. So it wasn't Gabe Kapler's fault, right? It wasn't Gabe Kapler who didn't know what he was doing. It's this roster, again, is not good enough. They don't have good enough relief pitching. They are going with a bullpen game. They finally released Vince Velasquez last night. We will never have to see him pitch for the Philadelphia Phillies again. Get the story over at 973ESPN.com. The Vince Velasquez era, he was designated for assignment on Sunday. He cleared through waivers. Nobody wanted him. The Phillies released him. Instead of saying, you know what, we're going to outright you to Lehigh Valley. Nope, they said, we've had enough. So finally, I think what Frank Close said yesterday, the first Band-Aid may have been ripped off of, hey, you can keep doing the same thing over and over again, right? It's the whole Flyers thing. You can keep saying, hey, we have good players. We're going to keep bringing them back. Even if the Phillies somehow figure out a way to get on track here, Dave Dombrowski is showing me that he's blowing this thing up. Not a total rebuild, but we just have to change the faces around a little bit. Just like the Flyers did. We've got to get rid of that core of Giroux and Voracek. It's time to do something. And I think you will see that that is the decision, or that will be the way that they kind of go with this thing. Kind of like what Chuck Fletcher did this offseason. It's just time to, we can't keep bringing back Bryce Harper, JT Realmuto, Rhys Hoskins, Andrew McCutchen, Didi Gregorius, Gene Segura. Those 6 guys have gotten multiple chances together, and all they've shown is they're good enough to get me to September and then fall apart once September gets here. Aaron Nola, Zach Eflin, Hector Neris, the same particulars. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. This is a Sports Bash Wednesday, which means Fine 5, Ugly 5 is coming up in about 2 hours from now. My 5 best, 5 worst teams in the NFL. Who are yours? 609-403-0973. Brought to you by Dell. For all your small business needs, call a Dell Technologies advisor today. Mike McGary from the Press of Atlantic City. Somebody is texting in about McGary's article in the paper, so we'll talk to Mike about that. That's text from Bob from Ocean City. You can get your text message in 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Download the free mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle. You can get it in the Apple Store or Google Play and message us through the app right here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN. Mike McGary's appearance today brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential services for your home and business online, calvielectric.com. Mike McGary, columnist from the Press of Atlantic City, covers it all, baseball, football, high school sports, from top to bottom. And he joins us now here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN on a Wednesday. Michael, what's going on, man?
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Everything is good. Everything is very peachy. Now, let me ask you this. We've been talking a lot throughout the year about the Phillies and where they are. Joe Girardi, your opinion. Hot seat, not hot seat. I mean, I feel like this is getting down the Andy Reid road, man, of we need to do a better job. And last night he said it again. Well, we keep working 144 games into the season. What are you working on? It's not working.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have questions about his future, right? I think that's fair to say because he's going into the final year of his contract. There is a club option for the following year, but most teams and most managers don't like to have that lame duck status. So I think whenever the Phillies' fate is decided, and I think it's going to be decided fairly soon that they're not going to make the postseason, the first of many questions the Phillies face in the offseason will be, is Joe Girardi coming back? Does he want to come back? Because he's got that third year of his contract. Is the team going to pick up his option? Does he want to be a lame duck? I think that's the first of many questions the Phillies face in the offseason. And I think as soon as they get eliminated, boom, Joe Girardi moves front and center.
I know it's easy to say, look, what Kapler made the playoffs. They're the best team in baseball right now. But this team has sunk in September for 4 or 5 straight years now. It's been the same exact thing. They're in it till the end of August, and then September comes. They're 4-8 in the month of September right now. So how is that continuing to happen? Is that more on this front office, or is this more on Joe Girardi, and was it more on Gabe Kapler?
I think it's more on Matt Klentak and Andy MacPhail. I think every day you take a step forward. I think you look at the Klentak-MacPhail era and the rebuild that was supposed to happen during the 5 years they were in charge as an utter failure. Because you're exactly right. The same sort of mistakes, the same sort of season-ending storyline is playing out under Gabe Kapler, under Joe Girardi, as it did under Gabe Kapler. And you say, hey, Girardi had success in New York. Kapler's having a ton of success in San Francisco. Maybe the problem isn't them. Maybe it's roster construction. And right now, the roster construction of the Philadelphia Phillies is squarely on the shoulders of Klentak and MacPhail era. I mean, the rebuild looks like it's in major need of a rebuild right now.
You're right about that. And I don't want to get too far into the offseason yet because we'll have those conversations in a couple of weeks if, in fact, they don't make the playoffs. But does this feel a lot like what Chuck Fletcher had to do with the Flyers, where he just had to just scramble the pieces up just to change it? Because we've talked about it at the trade deadline, Mike. There's not a lot of attractive pieces to fix this team in the offseason that other teams are going to want.
Mike, you could almost make the case that this team has got to begin the rebuild again. You look at the questions. You mentioned Girardi. Okay, what are you doing at third base? What are you doing at shortstop? What are you doing in left field? What about the future health of the catcher? What do you do with Aaron Nola? Do you need another starter that Eflin's out? You don't have a fifth starter right now. Your top 3 pitchers in the bullpen, Naris, Bradley, and Kennedy, are all free agents. That's off the top of my head. What are you doing in center field? What about Scott Kingery? What about Mickey Moniak? I mean, we just off the top of our head there listed like 13, 14 questions that have to be addressed. And I don't know if you have the answers to them all in one off season.
No, you're right. And you just mentioned, Herrera's been playing center field for you. You're lucky that you got what you got out of him after not playing at all last year. McCutcheon's a free agent. Segura is having one of his best seasons ever. You didn't capitalize on that. DD's back next year at $14 million. You just said you got to figure out third base. Even over at first base, is Rhys Hoskins and you're going to be able to keep those two guys again? I mean, they have a ton of questions, but was the first hint yesterday when they finally pulled the plug on Vince Velasquez? Is that it's time to start breaking up some of these guys who have been here too long?
Well, the reason for Phillies fans' optimism is I would go back a couple of weeks ago when Dombrowski remade the front office and said, hey, whatever we're doing player development-wise isn't working. The guys that were doing it, you're out. These new guys are in. We're going to hire a new player development guy. And then you look at Velasquez that means they're not going to rely on the same old answers to answer the questions that they've had for the past couple of years. At least Dombrowski recognizes, hey, the way we're doing things now isn't working. It's not working putting Vinny Velasquez out every fifth day. It's not working. The play development guys we have aren't working right now. We're not producing any homegrown players. In fact, our homegrown players are getting worse, not better, since we've drafted them. They're going the opposite way. So the lone hope you have as a Phillies fan right now is that Dombrowski, who has built championship organizations before, recognizes it as an issue and so far hasn't been shy about fixing those issues.
Yeah, well, guess what? Even if they somehow got hot, because they do play the Cubs, they do play the Mets, they do play the Orioles, they do play the Pirates, there is, I guess, that life support kind of hanging on to this season. You would imagine Dave Dombrowski's not going to get roped into the fool's gold, even if they made the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I wrote today. When it comes to, it's on the website now, when it comes to the playoffs, they look like fool's gold, right? Dombrowski's not going to be fooled. This is a team that's lost 6 out of its last 7 games. They look like anything but a playoff team. They're 5 back in the loss column with 18 to play. I know everybody likes to point to 2007 when they were 7 back or 7.5 back with 17 to play. But that team had Rollins, Utley, Howard, Cole Hamels, Victorino, Wirth, Jamie Moyer. Those guys aren't, to use the word of Rick Pitino, those guys aren't walking through the Citizens Bank clubhouse anytime soon. So, I mean, Dombrowski is not going to be fooled by anything. And the mathematics say the Phillies are still in the playoff hunt, but, looks tell you, my eyes tell me, no way.
Yeah, the must-win column appears on Friday, and we're starting to feel that we're getting to that portion of the season. By the way, Bob in Ocean City read your column, and he says, Mike, I disagree with Mike McGary's article about Bryce Harper understanding what it's like to play in Philadelphia 100%. How many times has Harper been called out for lack of hustle here and in Washington? L.A. called him out last night. Would it make a pimple on Bobby Clark's ass? I know where he can shove that rally hat. That's from Bob in Ocean City. So Harper, is he a guy that gets enough flack for what's happening with this team?
Well, I completely disagree with that. I mean, Bryce Harper has, and I have been to a ton of the games and watched a lot of the games. Bryce Harper's a guy who plays hard and hustles every day. I think last night what he did was almost play too hard. If anything, he's guilty of being too aggressive on the base paths, and it almost cost him last night, too running into outs sometimes. I think Harper's a guy who's played hard every day. I think the numbers that he's put up are phenomenal this year. I think he's playing through injuries, the back, the wrist. Here's a guy who got hit in the face earlier in the year. Let's not forget about that. Missed only a few days. I don't see how any Phillies fan could have any complaints with what Bryce Harper's done this year. He's the least of the Phillies' issues.
Yeah, and obviously you got an MVP candidate, a Cy Young Award candidate, and here you are. Mike McGary from the Press of Atlantic City. Check out his piece on the Phillies today on them pretty much being fool's gold, and I don't think most people would be telling you you're wrong about that column today. His must-win column appears on Friday. I want to get a quick thought. I know Friday we'll talk more about the Eagles and the 49ers, but much different challenge this week, Mike. A lot of people, the Eagles won, but they only beat the Falcons. This is a much bigger challenge this week.
Yeah, I mean, the 49ers, they put 40-something points on the board and really handled the Detroit Lions until the Lions made that comeback kind of when the game was in hand. You have a team that was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. You're going to have a better idea of what the Eagles are after this week, when they step up in class here and really begin a tough part of their schedule right now, which is why last week's win was so important with the games they've got coming up. So, the advantage for the Eagles is they are at home. They have plenty of momentum. They looked great last week. But again, let's see, we go week to week in the NFL. Let's see how we feel about 4:10 on Sunday afternoon, basically.
All right, then tomorrow night, it's your Giants, Mike McGary, taking on the Washington football team. Someone's going to be 0-2. So how important is the week 2 matchup?
Well, for the Giants, and I think Washington maybe has a little bit more leeway. They won the division last year, albeit with 7 wins. I think for the Giants, it's a flat-out must-win, if not for the emotional sanity of their fan base. I think the Giants have it's hard to believe, but I heard something on the radio the other day. I think the last 5 or 6 years, they actually have the worst record in the entire NFL. So forget about like those Jacksonville and the teams we think are horrible. It's actually the Giants who are the worst team in the NFL. It seems like every year they're starting 0-4, 1-5, 0-6. For the emotional health of the fan base, and probably my emotional health as well, we cannot take another 0-2 start. We can't start 0-2. So you have to go down to Washington. I know it's week 2, but it is a must-win down there.
Oh, there we go.
Especially you get a break. The backup quarterback is starting. You have to go down there and win that football game in Washington. And either way, the loser is 0-2. And, I don't care what you say about the NFC East division. 0-2 in football is a big deal.
Mike McGary, the Press of Atlantic City, his must-win column is on Friday. Give us a quick little look ahead to Friday night high school football.
2 big games this Friday night, 2 big rivalries out at St. Augustine. You've got St. Joe at St. Augustine, 2 parochial powers, meeting. And then the big one in Linwood, Ocean City and Mainland. It's a big deal when they meet in any sport. It's a bigger deal when they meet in football. Mainland's going to be honoring the 1995 team and celebrating the first year that lights went up. It should be packed down there at Linwood. So, 2 big rivalries that make high school football great being played Friday night, and should be a great weekend.
All right, more on that Friday from Mike McGary from the Press of Atlantic City. All right, Mike, thanks, man.
All right, we'll talk to you on Friday. See you later.
We sure will. I'll always enjoy a lot of fun talking with Mike. He'll be back on Friday. His appearance is brought to you by Calvi Electric, now offering residential services for your home and business online at calvielectric.com. That's Mike McGary from the Press of Atlantic City, who joined us today here on the Sports Bash. Is that game on Thursday night a must-win? Well, we're going to look at the NFC East a little deeper. Plus, my Find 5 Ugly 5, 5 best, 5 worst teams in the NFL. That's coming up in the 4 o'clock hour. Plus, Jeff Mosher for Football at 4 and the Professor John Clayton. Only here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. My man Jason Fitz is flying back from Vegas. He was at the game the other night, so he'll be jumping on tomorrow's show. So no Jay Fitz coming up on the other side. But when we come back, all right, I got a little Ben Simmons news for you. Stick around. Hour 2 of the Sports Bash, live 97.3 ESPN. Thanks to Mike McGary. Indeed helps you hire great people fast. Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. Visit Indeed.com/credit, Indeed.com/credit. We are wide open this hour, so it's a good chance for you to chime in. 609-403-0973 is the text board. 609-403-0973. That's the text board. You can download the free mobile app and message us through the app, thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle. And, of course, you can watch the show live on YouTube and Twitter and get your questions in over there. You can always give us a call at 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. That's the call-in number. We'll open up the phones for this full hour if you want to jump in that way as well. A little two-way conversation. Eagles and Niners are in play. Phillies playoff hopes are in play. But I want to start with the report that just came out just about an hour ago. Tom Moore, who has covered the Sixers for a long time. I mean, he has been covering the 76ers, my God, probably 25 years. He is now the sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier-Times. He tweeted this out about an hour ago. According to one of his sources, the Sixers are expecting Ben Simmons to show up. Now, the expectation is that he will show up and that it is bumpy right now, and the team expects it to get better. They do not plan on making a deal if they are not getting viable offers. That is the tweet from Tom Moore about Ben Simmons. So, for everybody, now keep in mind, September 28th, that is training camp. So, between now and September 28th, which is, just a couple of weeks away from here, we're on what, the 14th, the 15th? So, we're looking at less than 2 weeks away from training camp starting. So what is the messaging there? Tom Moore, again, an NBA source tells Tom Moore the Sixers are expecting Ben Simmons to play this season. The expectation is they will. It's bumpy right now, and the team expects it to get better. The Sixers don't plan on making a deal that would drop them back in the standings and not getting viable offers. Now, Moore went on to say this. Eventually, he's going to show up. The Sixers will go from there. They apparently plan to fine Simmons if he doesn't attend training camp, preseason, and so on. They don't want to trade for draft picks and try to convert to players. I'm sure if you look at this, right? You look at how to analyze this whole situation. Everybody who's been here, Jimmy Butler wanted out of Minnesota. They brought him into Minnesota. They eventually traded him in November. James Harden didn't want to play in Houston. They eventually traded him to Brooklyn. Butler showed up. Remember, he went to that practice. He dominated the Timberwolves, all the bench players. He was screaming at them, that whole story. And then the Sixers swooped in 13 games into the season and traded for Jimmy Butler. Harden went to camp with the Rockets, and then basically after being out of shape and just not being interested, they got rid of him to the Brooklyn Nets. The question is, did they have the right leadership? Do the Sixers have the right leadership? I mean, on the surface, I would say I don't see this thing ending well for the 76ers. But is Daryl Morey the right guy to kind of deal with this? Does he have the stomach to kind of say, guess what? We have you under contract. You need to be here. Get your butt into camp. Or if you don't want to show up into camp, we'll fine you. I've seen people saying that the Sixers should try to trade Ben Simmons for John Wall. I'm not interested in a John Wall deal. Thank you very much. I mean, John Wall, any team he has been on has been terrible. They essentially would be giving up Ben Simmons for a guy who scores a whole bunch, plays zero defense, doesn't shoot very well, and is now 31 years old. John Wall is on the back end of his prime years. I get it. The whole Simmons situation is very difficult right now to navigate. He doesn't want to be here. He's under contract. We've seen these things play out before. In the NBA, these players say and do what they want to do. But Ben Simmons has reportedly been receiving interest from 4 to 5 teams. That was on the Scoop podcast with Brian Windhorst. The Cavaliers, the Timberwolves, the Kings, they're all rumored to be in the running. A couple other teams apparently are in the mix there as well. The Sixers have to just go through the minutia and the pain of hearing this and seeing this all play out in front of them. Ben Simmons has lost a lot of trade value because of, one, his performance, and 2, because he has now come out and said, I don't want to be there. But Daryl Morey has been through these situations before. By making the move of bringing draft choices in here, Morey can't go down that road. So he almost has to do something similar to what he did last year, or what the Rockets did last year with James Harden, which is hope that he shows up, hope that he goes out there and plays, and hopefully he plays well enough that the team says, look, we'll still trade you. Just go out there and up your trade value for us. You want to get out of here? We want to get you out of here. Let's do this on the same page. Daryl Morey isn't an idiot. As I said before, he's not going to just trade Ben Simmons just to trade him. That's not happening. He is not going to just say, you know what, you want to be traded, I'm going to get you out of here. That's just not happening. It's quite obvious to me that Morey, his approach at this point is he's going to force Ben Simmons to show up. He will not sell Ben Simmons for pennies on the dollar. He's not afraid to go down this road. So this is going to be a chess match of epic proportions here. Who's going to win? Daryl Morey or Clutch Sports? Because it's not Ben Simmons. It's Clutch Sports. But the stuff that Tom Moore puts out there, Daryl Morey is doing the stare down with Rich Paul right now. And Daryl Morey's saying, you can hold him out all you want. I hold the keys and I hold the cards. Which is what? I have him under contract and I can fine you. And it's not like I have him under contract for this season and next year. I have him under contract for multiple seasons. The 76ers have Ben Simmons under contract until the year 2024. So this season, next season, and the season after that, Ben Simmons is under contract. I don't know that the Sixers misplayed their hand or that Ben Simmons misplayed his hand. Ben Simmons doesn't want to be here. He has seen other stars in this league say they don't want to be in certain spots. But Daryl Morey is expecting Ben Simmons to report to training camp. That, according to a report from Tom Moore. Is that the right move? Look, I have maintained all along, he is just not going to give up Ben Simmons for nothing. So is it the right move? Yeah, if you don't feel that you're getting the right value in return, you're not just giving him away for nothing. 609-403-0973. That's the text board, 609-403-0973. As always, Ben Simmons, a very polarizing discussion. People, want to see him move on. Most people are ready for him to go. Daryl Morey is telling you, look, if you like Daryl Morey, most people like Daryl Morey. Most people think that Daryl Morey is very good at the job he does. Well, don't you think you have to then support him in his decision to say, I don't want to just give up Ben Simmons for nothing? This whole situation right now is he doesn't want to be here. He feels that the team didn't back him. It's preposterous. Ben Simmons, it's preposterous. That's all you need to know, right? The fact that Ben Simmons feels that Doc Rivers didn't stand up for him, it's ridiculous. And I think Daryl Morey feels confident enough that if he could just say, look, When you're here, I can sit down with you. We can have a conversation. We can all kumbaya this thing. I think it's a pretty easy fix. A lot of times, you can't do it through text message. You text message somebody, you read that text message, you're like, what do you mean here? Like the tone of the text message sometimes doesn't go the way that you anticipated it to go. You might text someone and they read that text message and they read it really wrong. You get with them in person. Hey, Ben, take a seat, man. Let's talk this thing out. We've been texting back and forth. Obviously, some of the things that I'm texting you, you're not reading the right way. Some of the things you're texting me, maybe I'm not reading the right way. Let's see if we can get in a room, sit down, and hash this whole thing out. Because I would imagine that Ben Simmons, Rich Paul, Doc Rivers, Daryl Morey, Joel Embiid, none of them have been in the same room for any of this stuff, right? Can we make that assumption this offseason? I think Ben Simmons this offseason has either been at this party, that party, this gym, taking videos of him shooting here, going out with that girl there, taking pictures of his new car there. I mean, everywhere but with the 76ers front office. And part of that's on him. Ben Simmons does some of this to himself. What did Shaquille O'Neal say and Charles Barkley say last week, right? That you're not all that good. You need to be working on these things. So I think if you look at Ben Simmons and this whole story, if they can get to training camp and get him in there, and now if he doesn't report, he's going to get fined. But if they get him there and Daryl Morey can sit down with him and his agent and say, like, Ben, look, we will help try to get you out of here. We don't have any problem with that, but we value you. The fact that we're not just trading you for, let's see, somebody messaged on the app earlier. Let me bring that email back up and read that one off because somebody asked about, I'll have to bring that one up. Let me see here. Where's that? Here we go. Over on the free mobile app. Mike, what about the trade possibility? Malcolm Brogdon and Warren for Ben. That's from Jim in Atlantic City. Jim, I think that trade was already turned down, and I don't know that they go back to that trade. They don't want pennies on the dollar. That's a pennies on the dollar trade. TJ Warren, really? Come on. You're going to take a journeyman? TJ Warren is a nice player. He's bounced around. Phoenix, Indiana. He has a role, but you're going to take TJ Warren for what Ben Simmons does? You're getting a lesser version of Ben Simmons, essentially. TJ Warren's a good defensive wing player who scores about 15 points a game, doesn't shoot the three, right? TJ Warren doesn't shoot the three hardly at all. He took 7 3-pointers in the playoffs last season. In the entire, well, okay, I take that back. He shot, well, he was hurt all last year. Okay, that makes more sense. All right. So Warren had that stress fracture. I thought that was his playoff stats, the 4 games. He played 4 regular season games. He did not make a 3 in the 4 games. He was 0 for 7. The year before that, he shot 40% from 3, but he's about a 35% three-point shooter. Philip in Stone Harbor asked an interesting question. Mike, why in the world did Ben sign this contract? There had to be issues. If I were Ben, I'd be pissed at his agent. Let's hope the Sixers GM holds firm. Ben is wrong, and everyone but Ben seems to know it. Shaq and Charles said it best. Philip, there's a couple of things here. One, why did Ben sign this contract? Well, at the time that he signed the contract, Daryl Morey and Doc Rivers were not here. Brett Brown was here. Brett Brown coached Ben Simmons' father. They had a strong relationship. Ben liked Brett Brown. Now, the GM, Elton Brand, very favorable guy. Ben liked Elton Brand. So he felt that he was in a situation where they had his back. Now you bring in a more veteran coach. People wanted Brett Brown out. Oh, you need a veteran coach. You need somebody in here. They brought in a new coach, but the new coach couldn't get to Ben Simmons. So what did he try to do? He tried to get on Ben Simmons' side. You guys, he's a treasure. You guys don't know what you're talking about. And then the one time that Doc Rivers said, hey, can you win with Ben Simmons as the point guard? He says, I don't know. And Ben Simmons took that as, you didn't back me. So why did he sign the deal? Because the organization has bent over backwards for Ben Simmons. He has bent over back. The organization, the Philadelphia 76ers organization, has babied Ben Simmons. They have bent over backwards for him. The one time that they didn't bend over backwards for him, he wants out. So that shows you the mentality of where Ben is. It's not good. For somebody who has said, look, I don't hate Ben Simmons. I appreciate Ben Simmons. The mental aspect of the way Ben Simmons is playing this and what he's showing here, that's not good. Ben Simmons could come in here and take what those things are being said about him and take them to the next level. Come in, shoot elbow jumpers, shoot a three-pointer, forget all that stuff, get to the basket, get to the free throw line, shoot 78% from the free throw line and tell everybody, hey, you were wrong about me. Instead, he wants to run to the next place that will baby his ass, right? He just wants to go to a place where he can get coddled. And that's the sad part of this whole thing. And I think Morey knows it. It's obvious to me that Morey knows it. He's going to force Ben Simmons to show up unless somebody blows him away. I don't think Morey is going to blink at this at all. Morey is, he's one of those guys that just doesn't take this stuff all that seriously. Hey, Ben Simmons, you want to bitch and moan and complain? Okay, whatever. You want to waste your day telling people this, that, and the other thing? Whatever. You could waste your time on somebody else. You can waste all day acting like you don't care about something, but your actions speak louder than words. Ben Simmons wants the Sixers to trade him, and Daryl Morey saying, you'll eventually give in. Hey, you have to be here. I'll fine you if not. Morey has the right temperament to handle something like this. That's for sure. Sports Bash live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. It's brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. You can message us through the app. So Tom Moore sends out the tweet that the Sixers are expecting Ben Simmons to play, and the expectation is that he will play. He doesn't have a lot of options. He doesn't have a lot of options. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Follow me on Twitter, at Mike Gill Show. Hey, I will tell you this. One thing I'm going to ask you to do is to download the free mobile app. You're going to want to have that app coming up down the road, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. Plus, the Phillies lineup is out. Ranger Suarez is on the mound. I got the lineup for you coming up next. 325 Wednesday. I'm Mike Gill at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. Download the free mobile app in the Apple Store, Google Play. Message us through the app. Got people watching the show live on YouTube and on Twitter. You can hit us up over there. In the comments section, a couple people talking about the Eagles. We'll get into those as well. Going to use this opportunity to answer your questions on the app, on the text board, and on the video feed. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Hit me up on the text, on the video, on the free mobile app through the Message Us button, and I will answer your questions now. I'll take this opportunity to do that. We'll go over to the video stream and see what you guys are talking about over there. Jalen checks in, watching the show on YouTube. He says, I think our D-line will be incredibly impactful as well. Jimmy G is not someone who can really extend plays or play outside the pocket. If we can crush the pocket, he may make some bad decisions. Jalen, Jimmy G is just he's such an underrated guy. He's such a underappreciated guy, I guess you could say. I mean, the guy took the team to the Super Bowl. When he got the opportunity to play in New England, he played well. He's just not flashy. He's not one of these guys in today's game that wows you. But game one, 314 yards, 68 completion percentage. He didn't throw an interception. He averaged 12 yards an attempt, completed 17 of 25. You know, he just was very efficient, right? He was very efficient. He lost a fumble early on a bad exchange on the snap. But after that, everything was pretty good. He had a touchdown pass to Deebo Samuel that Samuel took 79 yards, 12.6 yards per attempt for Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think I disagree a little bit with what you're saying. Garoppolo can make stuff happen. He can move out of the pocket. He has very good awareness. He has the ability to kind of feel the pressure coming. Here's the problem. San Francisco's offensive line's very good. So you said if you can crush the pocket, he makes bad decisions. That hasn't really been the case for Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, in his career, he has done a pretty good job of taking care of the ball. The 1 year that he played 16 games, he threw 27 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. It's almost 2-1. Not bad. Is he great? No. But I don't think he's a mistake-prone guy. I definitely think he's a guy that gets a little undervalued, a little underrated with his abilities. And the fact that they went up and got Trey Lance, I don't think that helped the situation, right? That certainly didn't do anything for making you feel like they really feel confident or comfortable with him. But, hey, I think with what you said, Garoppolo, can he make mistakes? Sure. But I don't think, like, if you just absolutely get into his, get up the middle on him. And by the way, that's easier said than done with this team. Right? That's easier said than done with their offensive line. The one spot they are a little weak on the offensive line is at the one guard spot. So that brings us to some of the other comments that are coming in here as well. Jay mentions Fletcher Cox. The whole Fletcher Cox thing is weird to me because he plays defensive tackle. That's not an area where you're going to fill up the stat sheet. So if you are wondering why Fletcher Cox isn't showing up on the stat sheet, you're not understanding football. The defensive tackle position, what he did the other day, he didn't get tackles. He doesn't get sacks. Well, he does get sacks more so than most defensive tackles. But in this game, Javon Hargrave got them. Fletcher Cox was a big reason Javon Hargrave had a big day. And then Jay says, the fact that Fletcher gets quarterback money to be average. First off, not average. Fletcher Cox, when you can get the double team and draw double teams and allow the other guys on the defensive front to constantly get one-on-one matchups, that's invaluable. Alex chimes in. He says, Fletch is just out there gobbling up double teams and still getting pressures while making life easier for everyone else on the line. That's the most perfect answer to the whole thing there, Alex, is that Fletcher Cox isn't going to get the 8 tackles or 3 hits behind the line. Now, every once in a while, he's going to have that big game where where Hargrave, they're going to say, look, or where he just beats his man. Where they say, hey, we're going to go one-on-one with Fletcher Cox and see if we can and then Fletch just has that big game. But if Javon Hargrave is the guy having the big day because Fletcher Cox is taking away Alex Mack and Lincoln Tomlinson and setting up one-on-one opportunities for Javon Hargrave, now then Hargrave has to win those matchups. But I think, Jay, you're a little off base on that one. 609-403 0973 609-403 0973. So, the one thing, Fletcher Cox gets paid a lot of money. Now, when did Fletcher Cox sign that contract? He basically took yesterday, they restructured his contract. So he made that a bonus instead of a salary. So they might have something up their sleeves with some other things here. But he has that contract. You said he's getting paid like a quarterback, which if he's getting paid like a quarterback, he's getting paid like a very average quarterback because he's only making this year $15 million. And next year he's making $16 million, and then he's a free agent. So he signed a 7-year, $110 million contract. That would be a pretty average quarterback if he signed a quarterback contract, as you kind of suggested there, Jay. He's not getting paid like a very good quarterback. He's getting paid like Ryan Fitzpatrick would if he was, or Jimmy Garoppolo. But what he does, we're all talking about Javon Hargrave had this great week. Yeah, sure he did. Because Fletcher Cox took up a lot of the attention. That's the way it kind of works. If that guy gets 2, I only have 1. If I beat my guy one-on-one, we can have a day. And that's what ended up happening. Because they have Hargrave, who, by the way, Javon Hargrave got paid pretty well to come over here from the Pittsburgh Steelers. He got paid pretty well last year. And people were talking about him being a bust. 609-403 0973 609-403 0973. Let's see. MPC Smith 1 is watching on YouTube. He says a 3-team deal, Cavs, Grizz, Sixers. I can't wait for this. Sixers give up Ben, Shake Milton, and Springer. That's their first-round pick from this year. And the draft rights to Bassey in exchange for Colin Sexton and Dylan Brooks. So who's going where? Ben, Shake, Springer, and the draft rights to Bassey. Who's going to Memphis? Who's going to Cleveland? Because all I see is Philadelphia getting Colin Sexton and Dylan Brooks. We got to see if the money works on that, number 1. Number 2, I think if the Sixers wanted to trade Ben Simmons for Colin Sexton, that deal probably would have already been made. So any deal involving Ben Simmons and Colin Sexton, if you're still pitching that, I would imagine, because Cleveland's still interested, that we know. That's being reported all over, that that Cleveland still has interest in Ben Simmons. So if the Sixers want Colin Sexton, I'm imagining that they can get him if that's who they want in the deal. 609-403-0973. Ryan A. Robb checking back in after a long layoff. Thank you, Ryan. He says, remember when you said Simmons was a better fit on this team than Luka Doncic? Yeah, I do remember that. At that time, Ben Simmons did not lose his mind mentally. If Ben Simmons is the regular Ben Simmons that we get typically in the playoffs, no, obviously that guy was not better than Luka Doncic brings to the table. If he's going to be that guy for the rest of his career, then obviously that's not going to be accurate. If Ben Simmons, somebody tweeted this out, that Ben Simmons in his first playoff season in 2018 averaged 18 points per game. 18 points per game. You go back to that year in the playoffs, right? And look at Ben Simmons' free throw shooting. You go back to his playoff stats from his first season in the NBA, which is why this is so mind-boggling at what happened to him, is in the first season of his NBA playoffs, he shot very well from the free throw line. What do you got?
There's about $20 million missing from that trade that you mentioned. Dylan Brooks and Colin Thompson make way less people realize, and let's be realistic. People need to stop doing NBA 2K trades without the trade simulator restricting them.
Yeah, it didn't sound like there was the right money there.
It just, you're literally missing about $20 million.
Yeah, so that trade can't be made.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was good effort. Hey, listen, I like that people try. I'm not knocking him for trying. I have no problem with that. I'm going back to Ben's rookie season when he was in the playoffs. I think he shot about 70+% from the free throw line in those playoffs that year. So you give me that Ben Simmons, 18 points a game, the defense that he plays, what he does switching, and if he shot the free throws like he did that playoff series against, I think they played Miami that year and then Boston after that, then we go back to that conversation. But if you want to show up later on down the road and be like, hey, remember when you said that? Yeah, of course I remember. I'm not saying I didn't say that. I don't have a problem with Ben Simmons. If you give me the Ben Simmons that I typically get, the guy shooting 32%, I don't think there's another player in the league I would say I would take him over. I can't get a 32% free throw shooter. Thank you for chiming in, Rob. Appreciate it. Jason is checking in, says, random, I'm ready for some Flyers. A lot of new guys, feeling good about them having a bounce-back year. You know, Jason, I'm feeling pretty good about this Flyers, the change, too. I think Chuck Fletcher's done a good job of just changing the decoration in the room. He kept a lot of the furniture, but he just kind of changed the decorations in the room. You know? He's still got, you know, his good, comfortable couch there with Claude Giroux. He's got that nice recliner over there with Sean Couturier. But, you know, he got a new television set. You know, he got a new wall to put the wall mount for that TV. He kept the couch. He kept the recliner. He just went and got a couple of accessories for that room. He swapped them out. Like he had the old tube TV in Jake Voracek, and he swept that out and brought a flat screen in. So I'm okay, Downing, with that tweet, with that message on the video there. 609-403-0973. Text board is open. Keep them coming. Also, if you are watching the show live on YouTube and on Twitter, you can message us over there. Just don't have to be the guy that says, remember you said. Yeah, we're not idiots. We remember saying stuff. No one says to you, hey, do you remember that you said this? Why can't you just have a adult-like conversation? Like, hey, man, you remember we were having that conversation? Ha ha. No, people always act like they're remember when you said, yeah, I do remember. I absolutely do. And guess what? If you gave me the Ben Simmons that I got when he was in the playoffs a couple of years ago, I got to get his playoff. Why can't I find that on here? Let me go. I usually can find this stuff pretty quick. I'm pretty fast at finding this stuff. I don't understand why they don't have his playoff by season. Yeah, it's usually right here, but his free throw shooting in the playoffs that year, I couldn't believe this when I saw it. In 2018, when he went to the playoffs with the Sixers, his free throw, he was 25 of 35, 71%. If you give me Ben Simmons shooting 71% from the free throw line, scoring 18, his numbers that year were 18 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 71% from the free throw line. I'll take that guy. I will take that guy. 18 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 71% from the free throw line. That guy I can win with. The guy the next year shot 69% from the free throw line. It's 33% that's a problem. 33% is a massive problem. 71%, you can win with that guy. 18 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists. I think everybody would suggest, okay, I can win with a guy giving me a triple-double every single night and shooting 71% from the free throw line. Now, is Luka Doncic more flashy? Does he take more big shots? Sure, of course he does. Doesn't play a whole heck of a lot of defense. And the Dallas Mavericks, the runs that they have made in the playoffs have been cut a little short. We all get enamored by individual players' talent. I'm all for great players individually, but I want to know how your team does with you as the best player on that team. Dallas has been out of the playoffs. They have a very good individual player. They probably need better talent around. Luka's the best player on that team. Ben is not the best player on this team, right? They have Joel Embiid. He's not the number one player on this team. He's not the number two offensive option. Jason Downey, remember when you said Vince Velasquez sucked? Yeah, he did. I do remember saying that. I do remember saying that many a years. I've been saying that since pretty much they got him in 20. I couldn't believe they got him in 2015. All right, when we come back, I'll take some of your phone calls. If you want to jump on board, we'll open up the phones right now. 609-403-0973 is the text board. 609-403-0973. That's the text board. The phone lines are open at 609-573-3776 Atlantic County, 609-573-3776 Cape May County, 609-573-3776 in Delaware, Ocean County, Camden County, Burlington County, Gloucester County, Salem County, wherever you're listening. We want to hear from you. I am Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. Watch the show live on YouTube and Twitter. I'm back with more here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And take the show on the go with the free mobile app. All right, Sports Pass Live, 97.3 ESPN. Week 1 might be over, but the season's just getting started at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. To kick off Week 2, DraftKings is giving all new customers a can't-miss offer. Just bet $1 on any football game this week and receive $200 in free bets instantly, no matter what. That's right, DraftKings Sportsbook is giving all new customers $200 in free bets instantly when they bet at least $1 on any football game. DraftKings is safe, reliable, and secure, making it easy for you to deposit and withdraw your money at your convenience. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use my promo code 973 to receive $200 in free bets when you place a $1 bet on any football game. That's my code 973 to get your $200 in free bets instantly. This week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. You must be 21 or older, New Jersey only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook. For details, gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, I'm Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. Download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. Let me get you the numbers, 609-573-3776, 609-573-3776. You can jump on board. We'll take some of your phone calls and read off some more of your messages and texts throughout the rest of this hour. Jeff Mosher at 5, John Clayton at 4:40, and Jeff Kerr tonight on the NFL as well. So we got a lot to do. Let me go to the phones, talk to my man Glenn in EHT. What's going on, Glenn?
Yo, Mike, what's going on?
All is good, my man.
That's what's up. Listen, from what I can understand, from my understanding of following the NBA as long as I have, the players run the league.
Yeah.
So at some point in time, if Simmons comes in there physically, that doesn't mean if he's already checked out mentally, what makes people think that you're going to get 100% Simmons? If he wants out, at some point in time, the cancer will have to be removed. And he will be moved. If he comes there, who's to say he's going to be going all out like he really wants to be there, even if he's physically there? So at some point in time, I think he will be out of there. Players in the NBA, when they want out, supposed superstars,
yep,
they get moved.
Oh, I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, they're saying he's going to report, he's going to show up. Now, at that point, see, this is what I said, Glenn. Have they got a chance to sit in the room and just say, hey, look, man, what is on your mind? Like, you text somebody, they read that text, it could be a little wrong. I don't know that these guys have all sat in a room and just kind of said, look, let's talk this out.
I wouldn't doubt that in today's world, it doesn't seem like people talk face-to-face anymore. It seems like we only do stuff through social media and, text messages. That's just the way the world has evolved.
Right.
So, but to me, I look at Simmons as a guy who, like, we don't know him personally, but he just looks like he doesn't really look.
But wouldn't you say, Glenn, that this organization has babied him and coddled him and bent over backwards for him?
Oh, I can't believe he would have the gall to say they haven't on any level, because Doc Rivers doesn't answer the question the way he wants it answered, and Joel Embiid calls him out for what actually happened. He just called it the way it was.
Exactly.
I mean, that's why Simmons' whole issue is in the mirror. He needs to look in the mirror.
100%. You're 100% right on this. The fact of the matter is this. They have coddled him and babied him, and the one time that they went outside that box, he said, I want out of here.
Yeah, I think if he wants out, Mike, he's going to get it. I don't know when, but I really believe it's just a matter of time. If he really wants out, like you said, they get in a room and they're able to somehow iron things out. I just don't think you're going to get that Simmons that you think you can get when he comes in there. Just because he's there physically, not going to be the Simmons that everybody wants to see.
This all comes back to him, and his mentality shows me he doesn't really care, but it all comes back to him. They could say, look, we will acquiesce. We will trade you. But you need to raise your trade value on the court. So you can be pissed off at us all you want. But if you want out, you better go out there and play the way that other teams will want you, not what they're offering for you right now.
See, I was thinking that too, and I'm thinking his management team tells other teams, listen, he wants out of there. They may tell him how he's playing. All we want to do is get him out of there. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes, Mike? I feel what you're saying.
Yep.
But if his team behind the scenes is telling teams, listen, he's going through the motions there, fellas. Once it comes to you, you're going to get the real Ben Simmons. We really don't know, man. It's going to be interesting.
It sure will, Glenn. Appreciate the call, man. That's the thing. Is Ben Simmons going to get on the same page as the Sixers and say, look, I don't want to be here, but I understand for you to trade me, I have to go out there and play. You know, if he really wants to say, and look, if he wants to say, well, I don't want to go to Cleveland, I don't want to go to Minnesota, I don't want to go to Sacramento, well, then Daryl Morey says, Ben, if you don't want to go to those places, you need to show these other places that you've improved, because I'm not getting calls from them right now. You know, it's one thing for Ben Simmons to say, well, I want to go to L.A. or I want to go to Miami or I want to go to Chicago. Well, they're not calling. Sorry, dude. How do you get them to pick up the phone and call? You get out there and play at a much better level than what you showed the last time you were on the court. You know, you can't shoot 35% in the playoffs and then think that the Lakers are going to call and say, we're really interested in him and we want to give you a boatload for him. This comes back to you, pal. Like, if you want out, we'll acquiesce, but we need your help. Like, that's where you get in a room and have this conversation. You don't do it on Zoom. You don't do it on a text message. You don't do it through an email. You sit down and say, Ben, we understand you don't want to be here. We're fine with that. We understand. We have helped you. We have done everything we could in our power to bring you to this point. We have maybe even babied you a little bit too much, and that is why you feel the way you do. Now, of course, you're not going to say that in the meeting, but we have supported you. You haven't taken a jump shot in 4 seasons, and nobody has come out and said, hey, this guy stinks. He can't play. We have supported the way that you have played this game. But now you're saying you want out, and we're not getting the phone calls that we want to get for you. We are valuing you more than you are valuing yourself, because we're not willing just to give you up. 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. That's the way this thing is shaping up. Now, Tom Moore reporting today that the Sixers, they think that Ben Simmons is going to show up, that they think Ben Simmons will be at camp, and we'll see where it goes from there. I mean, at this point, he has teams interested. But as I've maintained, Daryl Morey is not going to just give him up just to give him up. Daryl Morey values him more than you value Ben Simmons. I'm Mike Gill. Follow me on Twitter, at Mike Gill Show. Download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle. You can message the show through the free mobile app. And coming up next hour, we're going to talk a little football with Jeff Mosher for Football at 4. We'll do the Fine 5, Ugly 5. John Clayton, the professor, joins me. That's all still to come in the big 4 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash Live. It's the big 4 o'clock hour, the biggest 4 o'clock hour that you're ever going to see. Jeff Mosher, John Clayton, Fine 5, Ugly 5, and me, Mike Gill, here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, guys. And, of course, their pregame show live, 10 o'clock, to get you ready for the Eagles and Niners on YouTube. Jeff Mosher, Adam Kaplan, Andrew DeCecco, they are Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Today it's Jeff Mosher, powered by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience now at Caesars.com. The Eagles with the big win over the Falcons, and now they turn their attention ahead to the San Francisco 49ers. Jeff Mosher, what's up, my man?
Michael, how are you?
I'm doing well. I like the matchup this week. Very intriguing. A team the Eagles beat last year, by the way, one of their 4 wins game in San Francisco. But both of these teams, Jeffrey, are much different than the ones that met last year in San Jose.
Yeah, they are. Obviously, the Eagles have a completely different roster. Not completely, but a lot of, obviously a different coaching staff, different quarterback, a lot of different players in certain positions, different scheme. I think that's the biggest thing that's different on the Eagles side too, as they go into San Francisco. And what makes it difficult for the 49ers is, and they're on a new defensive coordinator in D'Amico Ryans, a very familiar name for Eagles fans, but he is, under that Robert Saleh tree. He gets promoted to defensive coordinator. So they do a lot of the similar things, but he doesn't really know, other than what he saw on Sunday, what Nick Sirianni's offensive philosophy is like. He has one game of tape on it to prepare for, as opposed to, say, last year when he and Robert Saleh were putting the game together, the game plan for, say, Doug Peterson and Carson Wentz. So now there's a little bit more of a guessing game on their side about what the Eagles are going to do offensively.
Yeah, obviously in that both these teams had high expectations last year, and both these teams had a lot of injuries. San Francisco, Jeff, I think was hurt more than any other team in NFL history. I think they lost more guys than anybody, but they've already starting to get the injury bug. They lost Mosher, they lost Verrett on the defensive side of the ball. So how do you think those 2 injuries might play into this game? Big factors, not factors?
No, I definitely think it's a factor, and it's an area that the Eagles are going to have to look at to try to attack, maybe even more so this coming week than last week, when they were content to take what the defense gives and be able to move the ball more laterally and horizontally than vertically. But the 49ers did not have a good cornerback situation to begin with. Jason Verrett's a good one, but he's been hurt a lot in his career, and he just got hurt. As you mentioned, he's out for the year. They had to bring in Dre Kirkpatrick, a veteran who's a pretty good, decent corner, but he was literally just signed by them, I think, yesterday. They had worked him out earlier and opted not to sign him, but it's not a position of great strength for them as opposed to some of the other areas on that team. And with the Eagles and their offensive line being able to block and be healthy, this is a game where I would suspect you would want to see Jalen Hurts look to drive the ball a little bit more when given the opportunity. I also think they're going to have to do that to score points. This is an offense in San Francisco has that I believe will match up fairly well against the Eagles defense, and I would expect them to score more points than Atlanta did.
Jeff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast, it dropped this morning. I want to kind of get some breakdown from you on the offensive line. The Eagles' offensive line, I thought, won them that game. I thought they were that dominant. It allowed their offense to do basically what they wanted to do. Not a lot of pressure on Hurts. It allowed them to run the ball. It allowed them to move the chains. Looking back at the offensive line, that offensive line review, how dominant and who stood out?
It was a very dominant performance, one you would expect of an offensive line that has really good players on it. Jordan Mailata obviously came under the microscope, not only as a starting left tackle, but also as someone who just got a huge contract a few days earlier. And I know that Adam Kaplan said on the podcast that dropped this morning that some of the personnel sources that he talked to who grade the tape, and these are people from other teams like advanced scouts, so there's really no agenda, no bias, just what they see on the tape. They thought it was one of the Mailata's best performances in pass protection from start to finish that he's had. So clearly Jordan Mailata, we know the arrow has been trending up. We know they gave him the money at a time where it was a little bit risky, but the upside seemed to make it worthwhile. And for him to come out first game on the road, I don't think he was one of the guys that had a penalty, which is another good sign. Just that's what you need. That's what they're hoping for. Each game he continues to learn and understand his technique. I tell you, there are things that I just noticed on tape myself that where he's starting to learn and understand how to use his body, Mike. But he's such a big dude. I mean, everybody obviously saw the block that he put on the safety Richie Grant on the Jalen Reagor touchdown. But there were some sets where I noticed where he may have, kind of set back a little bit to overset to the point where you're getting a little bit too close to the quarterback. But while that invited the defensive end into him, he was able to anchor and then just stonewall that guy at the mark. So he's really starting to understand how to use the feet, the hands together, and just use all that weight and massive body that he has to his advantage.
I saw also Pro Football Focus take it for what it's worth that Isaac Seumalo was one of the best pass blocking players on the offensive line, guard, tackle, or center. I mean, if you get him going, he is kind of the thought to be the weak spot in the offensive line.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. He is thought to be the weak spot, but only because all the other four have all either made an All-Pro or a Pro Bowl team or both. So he's not a weak player. He's pretty good. He's the type of guy, right? If he became a free agent, I mean, we saw Big V get like $50 million from the Lions a couple of years ago to play right tackle. And Big V was good sometimes and not so good. He was a very inconsistent player, where Sam Howell tends to be more consistent. He's not great, but he's good enough. If he ever hit free agency, he would obviously command a lot of money. So he's a pretty good player. He did have a good game, but I like the way you said, take it for what it's worth, because as we saw, the Falcons really only have one good pass rusher. That's Grady Jarrett. And after that, it's a whole different story this week with the 49ers when you've got Javon Kinlaw and Eric Armstead and obviously Nick Bosa on the edges. So this will be a little bit better of a litmus test for how good this offensive line can be.
Hey, did you get a chance to kind of break down when they ran the ball? Did they run the ball more to their veteran right side? Did they go behind Mailata? Is he a guy that they feel comfortable running behind, or were they more running towards the right side with Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks?
Yeah, it did feel like, just watching the tape that is available, which is a sore spot. I'm sure you've heard people complain. The All-22 is not out yet, and nobody knows when it's going to come out. And not only that, but even rewatching Game Pass right now is not as good as it used to be a year or two ago when you can just go to separate plays. But I digress. Anyway, it did seem like most of the action was toward the right side. I don't know. That could be situational depending on where the ball was spotted and the hashes and everything, or just the fact that you've got Lane Johnson and Brandon Brooks there. That's great too. Or whether obviously they came out with 3 straight RPO throws to Quez Watkins on the right side. And, when I watched that, I thought they're doing RPOs here. And the reason why they're doing it over and over and over is because Atlanta is showing literally the exact same defensive front every single time. So why wouldn't you do that? And of course, Miles Sanders caught that nice screen that set up Kenny Gainwell's touchdown to the right side as well. So I think it just so happened to be some of their flashy and big gain plays came from the right side, but I don't know if that's a tendency that the coaching staff was trying to exploit or just more taking what the defense was giving.
Well, we know this week, Bosa, Armstead, they're going to have a much different level of competition. Mailata, I think a lot of people are looking at him because of that contract, and he's the one new guy, and now he'll have Bosa lined up over top of him. That's going to be probably a matchup to watch.
Absolutely. The big thing with Jordan Mailata now, you're the starting left tackle. You've got the contract. Last year, anything Jordan Mailata did positive was gravy, right? I mean, he's replacing Jason Peters. The pressure is off. People have no idea what to expect. They know he's huge, but they also know he's a project. And so he had some really good games early on and in comparison, and there was a lot of hype and buzz. But then, if you remember, a couple of games into it, he started to kind of regress to the mean. He had some rough games there against, I want to say, the Giants and maybe Washington, where, there were some bumpy parts to his game that you would expect. But now it seems like the hype is all the way back up when you win the job and you get the money. You're expected every week here to go up against a really good pass rusher, because every team's got at least one, and they're usually on the edges.
Yeah,
so he is going to be under the microscope.
Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, they looked a lot closer at the offensive line play, and that's going to be a big factor in this game because Atlanta's defensive front not nearly as talented as the front they will see from San Francisco. I think another one is last year in the game, Kittle had 15 catches on 15 targets for about 190 yards. And I don't know that I feel any better about them defending him this year.
It's funny because Adam and I have been calling him. That's our nickname for him, 15 for 15. That's what we just call him. I mean, think about that. Have you ever seen a game where anybody, forget tight end, a wide receiver, have you ever seen a game where somebody was targeted 15 times and caught all 15 passes? I think it was a record when he did it. So, yeah, look, the one thing you can say, though, about the Eagles this year, at least based off Sunday's game against Atlanta, and then what we know, it appears they're going to be a lot more zone-oriented than man-oriented. So last year, George Kittle, he lines up and he's looking at, Alex Singleton, he's looking at Mike McGary, he's looking at guys he can beat one-on-one in coverage as long as the quarterback has time. And, of course, you have the gift of Kyle Shanahan's schemes, which have a lot of motion and misdirection. But with the amount of zone they're going to play, Mike, now, I don't know that you're going to see him targeted 15 times. I think it's going to be a little bit more difficult to get the ball to him in those situations, but obviously it's a give and take. Stopping the run now is going to have to be the key for this defense because they're going to be in that zone and they're going to play a lot of safety deep, and that means they're going to have to do a better job up front of stopping the run game.
Yeah. McLeod, I would imagine, not going to play this week.
Yeah, I know today they reconvened. I'm waiting for the injury report to come out to see what they officially list on him, but I would think not yet.
How did the safety play go without him out there then? I mean, I know Epps got hurt, so you saw a lot of Kayvon Wallace. Did the Eagles like what they saw from their second-year safety?
I would think that they did. I mean, it's a little bit of a hard judge because every time Matt Ryan dropped back to pass, especially after the Eagles went up 15-6, it felt like he had a defensive tackle in his lap. So I don't know if the safeties had to work very hard in coverage. But what I like about this defense so far, from safety to corner, areas where the Eagles have struggled in the past, because they're playing zone, because you're seeing more two-shell coverages, Mike, it appears that Jonathan Gannon is just putting these guys in a position where you don't have to guard a guy, you have to guard an area. And as long as you can understand what your zone is, what your area within the zone is, we're going to be all right as long as we're getting our front floor pressure. So, when you have to play as man, as much as they've done under Jim Schwartz, you get a little nervous about some of these matchups. When you're playing zone, not much nervous about individual matchups, more as collectively, can we stop the run and can we get to the quarterback enough so that the quarterback can't pick apart our zones.
Yeah, I think the Kittle thing will be interesting because that gets the safety involved, it gets the linebackers involved, probably the two areas where they're the weakest. Deebo Samuel had a big game for them. I feel a little bit better. He had a big game for them in week 1, I should say. He didn't do much against them last year, but Darius Slay, Steven Nelson, these two guys, I feel like I feel much better entering games with wide receivers this year, essentially, than I felt in any game last year.
Yeah, I think, you have better personnel with Steven Nelson as opposed to a Michael Jacquet or a Vontae Maddox on the outside. B, you've got 2 safety coverages, so these guys get a little bit more protection than they have in the past. And then C, by the nature of playing zone and not having to match up individually, there's a little bit of a break there. I'll be curious to see Steven Nelson on Sunday. He's a tough, scrappy corner, physical corner. Book on him is that he struggles with speed receivers, and both Ayuk and Deebo Samuel have a nice little explosive element to their game. So again, that's why the front 4 rush or whatever Jonathan Gannon does to create pressure will be very important. Yeah. But if Jimmy Garoppolo has a lot of time, that's not going to be a good. I would expect, if he has time, maybe about 7 or 8 targets to Steven Nelson's direction.
Hey, Moshe, obviously the run game this week's going to be Mostert's out. They went with Elijah. What the heck was the guy's name that came in?
Mitchell.
Elijah Mitchell. Man, I forgot his name already. Elijah Mitchell.
How can you forget him? How can you forget Elijah Mitchell?
I don't know, man. I got a lot of names right on through my head on any given day. Elijah Mitchell just not at the top of my name chart right now. But
nobody knew who he was 5 days ago. It's all right.
He had over 100 yards in the game. And this is where last week, early in the game, a lot of yards on the ground, preseason. We talked about it on Monday, a lot of yards on the ground. What did you see about the scheme change, or if they did anything that would change that this week with this kid Mitchell, who, is an explosive player from what we saw?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, you and I are going to be like 80 years old someday and watching NFL games, and Kyle Shanahan's kid is going to be directing an offense in the NFL, and he's going to be taking guys off the street and turning them into 100-yard rushers. I mean, this is, Mike Shanahan did it, Kyle Shanahan does it, and then I'm sure the next Shanahan child will be doing the same thing. It's really, and I'm not trying to take anything away from Elijah Mitchell, but we see it. It's the scheme. It's what they do with the motion, the misdirection, the eye candy, the spread that they bring in, the West Coast concepts that create big gaps for running backs to be able to take advantage of. And it totally wouldn't surprise me at all, Mike, if now that everybody's talking about Elijah Mitchell, if Kyle Shanahan made Trey Sermon active and gave him the ball 25 times, just out of the element of surprise for the Eagles who hadn't, or anybody who hasn't yet seen him because he was inactive week 1. Yeah. So it's not about Elijah Mitchell. It's about the running game. It's about what they want to do to disguise what they are going to do.
So much hype this week around. I feel like I turned around, our studio set up, the TV's over my shoulder. I feel that every time I turned over, Sal Palantonio was on TV from NovaCare Complex. They're talking about Jalen Hurts, his jersey sales, 500% increase for Jalen Hurts. The ticket sales, the price increased by 50% on tickets. How does Nick Sirianni, a young first-time coach, keep the excitement level down and focus on a good 49ers team?
That's a great question. By the way, I saw Sal Pal today when I was down at the NovaCare. Looking good as always, as he does. I would say this. I don't know that it's Nick Sirianni who tempers everybody's enthusiasm, because he's kind of an enthusiastic guy. If anything, he's probably the Pied Piper of, hey, let's all enjoy what we've got here. But, I was there for Jalen Hurts' press conference, and and as I have been since going back to last year, I was impressed with his ability to just move on, process, diagnose, and then discard. Like he was asked about the jersey sales. He said his answer was pretty cool. He was like, look, that's great. I'm glad kids are buying my jersey. I want to continue to give them a reason to do that and be happy about it. And that was about it. Like, he's not a very expansive guy in his press conferences, and he's not a guy who appears to get very high about doing well or low about doing poorly. So I think he's got the right demeanor so far. I mean, we know that as games go by and you get to learn more about people and you'll see different patterns develop. But so far, he seems to have the perfect mentality to just allow all this hype to build without really affecting his mindset.
All right, Jeff Mosher, I have the injury report here.
Oh, yeah.
Brandon Brooks did not practice, knee/rest. So that, I guess, feels pretty good there. Marcus Epps, DNP. Zach Kurtz, Ryan Kerrigan, personal matter. JJ Arcega-Whiteside. They're all your DNPs. LPs, Fletcher, Brandon, Lane, Jason, Darius, all rest. Miles Sanders, rest. Landon Dickerson, knee. Calf Taylor, McLeod, knee. So essentially it's the same three guys as last week, and everybody else is resting.
Yes, everything. I would say so. I guess rest is now considered an injury. You're on the injury report with the rest.
Right. We are making sure we cross all the T's, dot all the I's. If you are taking the day off, we need to put you on the list.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty interesting here. It says Davion Taylor is a full participant, though. I can't remember if he was limited or full at the end of last week.
Landon Dickerson, too. Full participant. Davion Taylor, full.
Yep. Wow, that's really good for the Eagles. Good for both of those guys.
Apparently, Dickerson, Moshe, was in on the field goal team.
Yeah, I did see that. He was in on the field goal team. Now, here's an opportunity to get him on the field if he's ready to go and medically cleared as a sixth offensive lineman, maybe in goal line packages, maybe in short yardage, maybe in the middle of the field on 2nd and 3, and you're acting like you want to pick up 3 yards on a run and you spring a play action out there. So I've always had the sense, Mike, not reporting this, just always had the sense that when he was ready to go, that they're going to try to get him on the field in some form or fashion. And so here we go. We'll see if he makes it on the field on Sunday in some way.
This will be interesting, too. If Seumalo ends up having some great year, where he's constantly rated as one of the best guy, yada, 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 that's the spot that everybody anticipates. I guess Kelsey, if he hangs him up, then he goes to maybe play center. But, that would be an interesting story. If Seumalo plays so well that spot's not really up for grabs, How do you find a spot to get him on the field? Well, I guess there's some other aging players on this team, Brooks and Johnson, but Kelsey, I guess, is coming to the end. I know that you and Kaplan talk about this almost every year. If he feels like playing, we'll find out.
Exactly. I mean, there's optionality here. Sam Alu could have a really good year. Jason Kelsey may want to retire or who knows with the contract situation. You may move Sam Alu to center and play Dickerson at left guard. You may just love having Dickerson play center and think that he's the heir apparent. They've got a lot of different Brandon Brooks, obviously his injury status as we get into the year and whether or not he's still playing at a high level will also come into question because as I suggested many months ago, and he confirmed a couple of months ago that he was on the trading block if somebody wanted to, go up good value for him. So we'll have to see. But this is all stuff for down the road. I'm just, obviously we're just interested in seeing if they can get Landon Dickerson on the field this year in some kind of way.
All right, Jeff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast. Check that out. It dropped this morning. Also, Q&A is moving to when?
So it was originally going to be moved to today, Tuesday. Then we decided to move it to Thursday because we wanted to give those guys an opportunity to watch the tape and break it down and give analysis. But now that all 22 seems to not be coming out anytime soon, I don't know what we're going to do. So they're going to be Thursday this week, and then maybe we'll change it again next week.
All right. Well, follow them at Inside Birds on Twitter to get all the latest information on when that, because it's a great show between Jason Avant, Quentin Michael, and then the pregame show on Sundays on YouTube from Inside the Birds. Tomorrow, Andrew DeCecco and Adam are flip-flopping this week. So Adam will be on Friday. Andrew will be on Thursday. That's Jeff Mosher right there. All right, Moshe. Appreciate it, pal.
Take care, brother.
All right. The Inside the Birds podcast is out today. It's a really good one. They break down the offensive line. They go a lot deeper on the video and all that kind of good stuff here on Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. It's brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long at the Wild Wild West Tropicana Harris Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience at Caesars.com. This hour of the show, it's brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. When we come back, it is the NFL Find 5 Ugly Find, 5 best, 5 worst teams in the NFL. Find out which NFC East team made one of the lists. It's coming up next. This hour of the show brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how at PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Gill Show. Watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just search 973 ESPN. Don't forget, we're your home for Eagles football. You can watch the Eagles, listen to the Eagles and 49ers right here this Sunday. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick have the call, and you can hear it starting at noon with the Eagles Radio Network coverage at 1 o'clock. Merrill and Mike. All right, it's time now for my Fine Five, Ugly Five. These are the 5 best, 5 worst teams in the NFL after 1 week of play. Last week, we had a little bit of a shakeup in both the Fine Five and the Ugly Five. Which NFC East team is in this week? Well, here we go. Let's find out. Number 5 in the Ugly Five, it is the New York Football Giants. They were dreadful against Denver. Their offensive line, a huge problem. Their defense was just This is a team that, again, has decent skill players who don't make plays. The quarterback, huge fumble late in the game. I love the Giant fans, kind of pissy pants, crying, bitching and moaning. I love what McGary said earlier. I think they said this on Bart and Hahn earlier today, that the Giants have the worst record in football over the last 5 years. They're not good, and they weren't good in week 1. And I think that offensive line makes them one of the worst 5 teams in football right now. So number 5, the New York Football Giants. You are number 5 in my Ugly 5. Number 4, well, we got a good up-close and personal look at just how bad the Falcons are. And I've been saying for a while, they need to get rid of Matt Ryan. They need to move on from that Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. They ripped the Band-Aid off one of those guys. They needed to do it off both. It is time to start over from Matt Ryan and start over with that franchise. They are trying to hang on in limbo, but that Falcons team stinks. Their offensive line's a disaster. Their defense doesn't have one playmaker on that side of the ball. And right now, they are destined to remain in my Ugly 5 all season long. They are number 4 in my Ugly 5. Number 3, they actually moved down a spot. They were 2 last week, and this week it's the Jets. They fought hard. They were kind of in the game. They lose 19-14, but it's going to be a long year for the Jets. Injury problems. Becton looks like he's going to be out. Obviously, they have a rookie quarterback. You're hoping for excitement there. The wide receiver spot, not very good. Offensive line, not very good. But defensively, they hung in that game against a team that, has a couple weapons. Christian McCaffrey. We're going to talk to a Carolina Panther coming up in about a half an hour from now. Stick around for that. But the New York Jets are number 3 in my Ugly 5. Number 2, well, they were number 1 last week. They dropped down to number 2. They're in first place, but not good enough to get out of my Ugly 5. The Jacksonville Jaguars, yeah, they looked good for a week. And this is one of those weeks where I should reward you for the win, get you out of my uglies. But you beat a dysfunctional franchise right now. The Jacksonville Jaguars, number 1. Look, Tony Khan, who owns the Jaguars, his father owns AEW Wrestling. I think he's putting way too much attention on CM Punk and Bryan Danielson than he is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They stink. Urban Meyer wants out already. He is in way over his head in Jacksonville. You go and play the Texans in week number 1 after getting Trevor Lawrence and throw up that burger. Woo! You are number 1 in my Ugly 5. That is my Ugly 5 this week. Giants, Atlanta, Jets, Houston, and number 1, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Get used to it, Jacksonville, because I don't think you're getting out of my Ugly 5. Who are the Fine 5? These are the 5 best teams in the NFL after 1 week of play. Number 5 on my list is the Los Angeles Rams. I thought the Rams could have looked even better. They put up 34 points. I like the way Stafford looked in the offense. Their defense is very good. I think they'll get better. I think the Rams right now, number 5 in my Fine 5. There was a lot of contenders for that 5th spot, but I really like what they brought to the table. Number 4, San Francisco 49ers. The Niners, they didn't look great, but they scored 41 points on the road. That impressed me. Their defense, though, something was up in that defense against the Detroit Lions. But I really like the 49ers, what they bring offensively. So many weapons. Their offensive line's really good. I definitely think there's another dimension to their defense that we didn't see. I think they could be better in that spot. I was a little surprised they gave up 33 points to Detroit, but I'll go San Francisco, number 4. Number 3, Seattle. I thought in the division they had the most impressive win. They went to Indianapolis and won that game. So Seattle is number 3 in my Fine 5. That gives me 3 NFC West teams in my Fine 5 this week. I could have put New Orleans in there. They blitzed Green Bay last week. I'll probably get a little slack there. I could have put Cleveland for their loss. They look pretty good in their loss. I know that Cleveland guy last week said I should have put them in there. The other team I could have put in was Pittsburgh. They went to Buffalo and won. That's probably impressive. Kansas City's number 2. I don't need to explain that. They're pretty darn good. And Tampa Bay stays at number 1 in my Fine 5. Fine 5, Rams, Niners, Seahawks, Chiefs, and Tampa Bay. They're my Fine 5 this week. Fine 5, Ugly 5, brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. The all-new Matt Blatt, now open on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township next to Home Depot, online at mattblattnissan.com. That's the Fine 5, Ugly 5. We'll do it again next week. 5 best, 5 worst teams in the NFL. Well, what about the best, the worst 5 teams in the NFL? Which teams are already in some trouble? Which NFL teams already are up against with their back to the wall? We'll talk to NFL columnist John Clayton from the Washington Post. 5 teams with the most reason to worry after week number 1. What a crazy start to the NFL season. That Saints win against the Packers. Should they be worried? The Tennessee Titans, should they be worried? The Buffalo Bills, should they be worried? We'll ask John Clayton from the Washington Post when he joins me next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play. Week 1 is in the books, but are there 5 teams that need to worry? We'll find out. Washington Post NFL columnist John Clayton with the 5 teams with the most reason to worry after week number 1. I would imagine that Philadelphia doesn't make that list. They beat Atlanta 32-6. They will play San Francisco this week. We'll get some thoughts on that game and more with John Clayton right now, who has 5 teams with the most reason to worry after only 1 week, John. Boy, the NFL season seems to move quick, shorten up, and just change so much. But these 5 teams, let's start with this one, which is very interesting on that list. The Indianapolis Colts, who had very high expectations. They bring in Carson Wentz. What was the scuttlebutt about week 1 with Wentz and the Colts?
Well, Wentz didn't do too bad, but the offensive line was terrible. I mean, certainly you knew they had problems going in. Eric Fisher didn't play because of the Achilles injury. So their backup, Sam Kevy, was missing. But the rest of the line, which is really talented, didn't do well. I think part of it with Quentin Nelson was his bad back. But, Wentz just ended up getting beaten up badly. I mean, he had 3 sacks, 10 quarterback hits. And as the game went on, you can see him starting to wear down, and that held things back. And then, of course, the other thing is that as good as the plan was to run the football because they've got Nyheim, Hines in the backfield, Jonathan Taylor. So they start the game out, and when they went nickel on defense with Seattle, they were running the ball with Jonathan Taylor. Then all of a sudden, Ken Norton Jr. Tries to do some creative things, put some 3 defensive tackles in, and all of a sudden the running game was gone. So that's got to be concerning. You can see that Xavier Rhodes being out affected their ability to cover the pass. But where the big worry is the schedule. The schedule is brutal. They open up the season. They got the Rams this week. They had Seattle. They have 5 games against teams that won 10 or more last year. And that's going to be tough to overcome, particularly, they're not going to be 100% and they're going to have, some issues on the offensive line. Wentz, of course, goes into the game. He only had 4 practices. So there was going to be some rust and some issues there. They don't have their best receiver, T.Y. Hilton. And they're not real good at tight end. Jack Doyle's just real average. So I think you got to be concerned. But the big thing for them is, talented as they are, and as good of a team as they are, is the schedule.
The Colts are number 1. Another team that I think a lot of people like, but you think there's some reason to worry, Tennessee. This is a playoff team the last couple of years, maybe a Super Bowl contender when they went out and got Julio Jones. Why should they worry?
Well, why they should worry is that they made a lot of changes on defense. And the defense, was like 5th worst in the league as far as yards allowed last year. But then they come back and they give up 37 points to Arizona. I mean, the coverage in the secondary was not good. They still struggle to get any kind of a pass rush. So they've got 2 changes on the defensive line. That's concerning. And then, certainly, they got the talent on offense. But the fact that Taylor Lewan had the worst game of his career, giving up 5 sacks to Chandler Jones, wasn't good. And Tannehill didn't get a chance to really, kick the ball downfield or do anything. So they're certainly, I think, right now still in a position to win the division, but they've got to have some concerns.
John Clayton, the Washington Post, these are teams that already need some concern. One of them, the Baltimore Ravens, another team that had some Super Bowl aspirations. We saw them on Monday night. They had a chance to win that game in Vegas, but they leave 0-1. So why are they worrying?
Well, because, again, what do they have left on offense? I mean, they lose 3 running backs for the season, their top 3 running backs. Now they're down to pretty much undrafted guys and picking guys off the street like Latavius Murray. Then you look at the fact that Nick Boyle, the second best tight end, he's on injured reserve, so they can't go 2 tight ends. Their first round pick, he's on injured reserve, because and so that's not good. And then after the game, they find out that their left guard is going to pretty much miss a season with a knee injury. So what's left there on offense? Because again, when you're down that many players, that many starters, I mean, you're in trouble to a point right now where they still can make the playoffs, but you position them now number 3 in the division, not number 2. And Pittsburgh, of course, going to Buffalo and winning puts them at number 2. Cleveland, I still think, is number 1. But again, when you lose that many players, it's brutal.
Yeah, San Francisco went through that last year, and You have them as a worry team after week 1 this year. They're going to come to Philadelphia this week, so they got to travel all the way across the country, but they've lost a couple guys to injury. So why do the 49ers need to worry so early in the season?
Well, actually, they don't have to travel that far because they went down to the Greenbrier, so they just have to make the trip up north to Philly. So it's like that's not as bad, but where the concern is the injuries are creeping in for another year. I mean, you look at the fact that here's Jason Barrett, their best cornerback. He blows out an ACL. Emmanuel Mosley, he ends up missing the game with a knee injury. And then they already have Raheem Mostert, one of their best running backs. I mean, he's out for the season with a knee injury. They go with Jeff Wilson, who is on the injured reserve list. And then, they're losing too many players. They did the same thing last year. They had 131 missed starts last year, and now here they are, with a secondary that is now almost totally revamped if Mosley can't play. And you saw it in the game that here they're winning 38-10 over a bad Detroit team, but then Jimmy Ward gets banged up, and so there's nobody left in the secondary, and so they had a bunch of young guys out there. And the next thing you know, here's Detroit making a 41-33 game. I mean, the big thing with the 49ers, they're talented, but they're injured. And then Javon Kinlaw, still his knee isn't right from last year, and he's not playing the same. And he was the first-round pick that they picked up when they traded DeForest Buckner, which I think was a bad trade for the 49ers.
John Clayton, the Washington Post. These are good because a lot of these teams, John, had a lot of high expectations. Tennessee, Indianapolis, San Francisco, Baltimore, and then there's the Bears. They seem to be the whipping boy across the country because of the way they're handling this quarterback situation. But what should the Bears be worried about? This is a team that did make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, but again, it's like they made the playoffs because you have 7 spots, because they're 8-8. Were they really a playoff team? I question that. And now they've got the worst offensive line we've probably seen in many years. Because you'll appreciate they got Jason Peters out there at left guard. He didn't last long because of a groin injury. His backup, he gets a knee injury, so he's out. And then, of course, their right tackle is Elijah Wilkinson, who's an undrafted guy. And so all of a sudden, there's no protection. And Andy Dalton couldn't get the ball downfield. I mean, he threw 38 passes. He averaged 5.61 per attempt. And I think the longest pass he was able to throw because of the lack of time was, 17 yards. So there has to be some concern there.
John, I know the 2 teams that play on Thursday night didn't make your list of worry, but Washington's already lost their quarterback. The Giants' quarterback fumbled away a chance to win that game against Denver. How big is the Thursday night game in the NFC East?
Oh, it's huge because, again, it's like, you've got 2 teams that didn't win last year. I know Washington won. They've got a good defense, the better defense of the 2, and the Giants are real good on the defensive line, but certainly the quarterback change doesn't help. Jones continues to make turnovers. That doesn't help. But you got to win and at least stay in there because, again, I know that both of the 2 is probably more important for Washington because the way the schedule works right now. So the Giants' schedule isn't that tough, but Washington's a lot tougher because they got the first place schedule and they've got to play Buffalo, they've got to play Pittsburgh, they've got to play first place teams, they've got to play Seattle. And so now their schedule's tougher where the Giants have an easier schedule. As you know, the Eagles have the easiest schedule in the league, and then the Dallas Cowboys the second easiest. And so in the end, it's probably more important for Washington to win, but can they do it with Taylor Heineke?
I'm going to get your take on the NFC West because you talked about the Niners. All 4 teams won out there: Seattle, Arizona, the Rams, San Francisco. So of the 4, who stood out the most?
Seattle. And then the Rams, number 2. The big thing for Seattle is just how much better they look on defense and also the improvements they have on offense. I mean, so now that they're running the Ram 49er type offense with Shane Waldron, I mean, you can see there's a better tempo, a better pace. They run the ball real well. Chris Carson had 91 yards. Then their defense put good pressure on Carson Wentz. They did adequate in the secondary. Their linebacking core has more speed right now. And so they look good. I thought they were probably the most efficient of the teams when you look at the Rams. And now, again, a lot of it had to do with the fact that they're playing the Bears. But also, I mean, you can see that Matthew Stafford was able to take advantage and really destroy a Bears defense, which theoretically is supposed to be good. So that looks encouraging. San Francisco, of course, they didn't play anybody; they played Detroit, and then, of course, Arizona getting a great win on the road in Tennessee. That had to be huge.
Yeah, a couple more with John Clayton because there's some interesting other stories from week one. The Saints go out and clobber Green Bay. That one was in Jacksonville, so it wasn't like, they were in New Orleans. It was loud there, and, what happened to the Packers? They gave up 38 points.
Yeah, they seemed disinterested. And again, they gave 38 points, and it wasn't like Jameis Winston was passing the ball like crazy. I think he only threw like 25 passes, but he had 5 touchdown passes. And, one of the strengths you would think of the Packers, because all they do is draft cornerbacks, is their pass coverage, and it just wasn't there. Then, of course, you can see that Aaron Rodgers, he didn't play as well. I mean, he had a bad game. I just think there's a lot of internal problems on the Packers, and why I didn't include them is because they play Detroit this week. So on a Monday night game, they'll bounce back and win that one. But that's a team to watching, because I do think they have internal problems, and that could really cost them the season. And the only advantage that they have is right now the NFC North looks so bad. All teams in the NFC North lost.
Last one for John. Week 2, we have Philadelphia beating Atlanta 32-6 very handily. I feel like every time I turn around, someone's talking about Jalen Hurts. So people are talking about what the Eagles look like. And then they throw in what you kind of just threw in there is, well, they played Atlanta. How do you look at the way Philadelphia looked against I don't know, I'm going to say an inferior opponent? Most people thought the Falcons were going to win that game.
No, Falcons are they're in a total turnaround right now. I mean, sure, they got Matt Ryan. They've made adjustments at receiver. You can see how bad they looked on defense. And, I just looked at that as being one of the 5 worst teams in football right now. So it was an important win for the Eagles. But again, I look at the opponent and say it should have been a win.
John Clayton, The Washington Post, the NFL Week 2. It starts tomorrow night, and you can listen right here on 97.3 ESPN Thursday Night Football. A lot of great takes. Check out his Washington Post column each and every week. He's got 5 teams that need to worry after week 1. Check him out at thewashingtonpost.com. John Clayton, thanks, pal.
Thank you.
All right, John will be a part of the Sports Bash throughout the year. We'll try to tap into John and get his takes on the NFL, veteran NFL reporter. Those 5 teams, the one that he put in there is San Francisco, and he listed a bunch of injuries that have continued to plague that team. And that is a team, and I didn't realize they were sent it to Greenbrier in, West Virginia. I think the Greenbrier's in West Virginia. That they are staying there and didn't travel all the way back to San Francisco, so they don't have to come all the way across the country. But Brandon Ayuk had the hamstring. Their injury report that just came out, the Eagles' injury report just came out. The San Francisco had Eric Armstead did not practice. Kinlaw did not practice. Mosley did not practice. Ford was limited, and Ford had a good game. D. Ford had a good game. He was limited. And they had Armstead, Kinlaw, Mosley, Ford, and Marcel Harris, 5 guys that were either limited or did not practice today for the San Francisco 49ers, man. This is a banged-up 49ers team coming into Philadelphia again. Now, last year, Philadelphia went there, but crazy that they're going through a lot of the injury problems yet again. The San Francisco 49ers. We'll keep our eye on that throughout the week. Tomorrow, we got a busy show for you. We're live at Chickies and Pete's in Atlantic City. On the show tomorrow, Jeff Nadeau on how to bet the Thursday night football game. Sky Guasco for your fantasy football questions. Andrew DeCecco, football at 4. Ryan Paganetti, former Eagles coach on the Super Bowl championship team. He'll give you some insight on why this team might be way different from the team we saw last year. Todd Rank, NFL schedule, first look with Todd Rank. We will go over all the games, all the lines, get each other's thoughts on that. And Rob Motti tomorrow. But we still have another hour to go today on the Sports Bash. And when we return, NFL tight end from the Carolina Panthers, Colin Thompson, will join us. He also is a football coach for a local high school football team who has a great event Friday night. Find out more about it next.
Bash with Mike Gill.
I am the voice of the voiceless.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
A 5 o'clock hour starts right now on the Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill, at Mike Gill Show on Twitter. And, of course, you can download the free mobile app in the Apple Store or Google Play and take the show on the go. I hope you do that. And, of course, 5 o'clock hour here on the Sports Bash. It is brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt Nissan, 6211 Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. And, of course, you can go online at mattblattnissan.com. All right, here we go. Week 2 in the NFL starts tomorrow night. Week 1 is in the books. The Carolina Panthers 1-0, and one of their illustrious players is with us right now here on the Sports Bash. He is live in Carolina. There he is, Colin Thompson. And what's going on, man?
Mike, thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, nice win. Nice win last week, man. It's good to get one win in the victory column to start the season, and on to New Orleans this week.
Yeah, well, we'll talk a little bit about both of those things because you get the first win. It must have been an interesting week. I mean, obviously, you start that second year, and we talked back, in the summertime, and, the team had brought on a couple tight ends and all that stuff. They kept you on the roster, so congratulations for making the roster and, of course, being a part of the win. But, you had a new quarterback there. He's facing his old team. I guess that brings the whole roster together or kind of makes it a thing for everybody. When I'm imagining that first game, like everybody wanted to try to win that game for Darnold.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Sam has been just an unbelievable addition to the team. First off, he's a great human being, great guy, and someone I've really enjoyed getting to know, pick his brain. And obviously his football talent is immense. And I think, we're really seeing, Sam, when you see him up close and personal and you get to know him, I mean, you see how much experience he has for such a young guy. I mean, I feel like the old guy around here at 27. I think Sam's 24, and he's been in the NFL for 4 seasons, and he's had so much experience. He's played in so many games. So he's seen it all just about, and he can make all the throws, and he's got the mind to make all the checks, all the audibles, all the things you need to do. So, yeah, no doubt wanted to get that win for Sam. Absolutely.
Yeah, and obviously kind of a back, you guys, it's kind of I don't say back and forth. You guys go up 16-0, and then they kind of get that score in the third, and it's kind of a nail-biter at the end of the game there. So, a close game early against that Jet team, but you get McCaffrey back. Let's talk a little bit about what he adds, because that's something that your team didn't have last year for most of the season.
Yeah, I think he played in 3 games last year, and that's the first time he's ever missed any time. I think he played in 48 straight games. Someone was telling me before that, somewhere around that number 50 before he missed a game. That's really impressive in the NFL. The NFL is 100% injury rate. There's no 90%, it's 100%. So Christian McCaffrey is on another planet than every other player I've ever played with. The way he takes care of his body, how much he invests in his body, time, finances, the way he constantly is gaining knowledge. He has his process. It's different than everybody else. He is constantly attacking how to recover, how to get healthy. And then on the field, he is just ridiculous. I mean, for me to be able to watch this week, obviously played with him, and then this week, a couple of his big plays I was able to watch. I was on the sideline. He's just different. He plays at a different speed than everybody else. There's probably a handful of guys in the NFL that are just different than the rest, and that's him. He is unbelievable. He's an unbelievable leader. His dad played in the NFL for 13 seasons. His dad's a coach in college football. All of his brothers played college football. His mom was an All-American, I think, soccer player at Stanford. I mean, they're athletes at an elite level, and he brings that every day. What a tremendous leader. He's one of the faces of the NFL, face of us here in Carolina. I love playing with him.
Interestingly enough, he was on your podcast, the Not For Long podcast recently, and you see him holding up. Now, I got to say, the Lower Cape May Caper Tigers do have some of the finest uniforms in all of South Jersey. I love the black and the baby blue. That's such a nice mix. But he had a nice jersey with the military sleeves that he was rocking there. So, obviously, he's a guy that has been a part of the podcast, but you guys are doing something for Lower Cape May, the high school, because you're still talk a little bit about what you're doing still with Lower Cape May and the football team.
Yeah, so I'm still a volunteer there, still involved in the program. And something we're doing there on the field, this game coming up on Friday, starting at 5:30, we're playing Lindenwold, is we're doing a military appreciation night honoring all Cape May County service members, veterans. It starts at 5:30. It's going to, all of the proceeds from this military appreciation night go to the New Jersey Run for the Fallen. And it's an absolute tremendous opportunity to raise the money for a great cause and get together with the community of Cape May County and watch a football game. But also at 5:30, we have Black Hawk helicopters coming in. We have all frontline workers, police officers. We have firefighters, all the fire trucks, the police cars. The Coast Guard's going to be present. Army, Navy, Marines. We're asking all veterans to come out and just be involved in this unbelievable event that we're doing at Lower Cape May Regional. It's at Lower Cape May, starting at 5:30. There's going to be auctioned items, 3 Christian McCaffrey jerseys that the players will be wearing. They'll be number 22 for the 22 troops today that commit suicide. And actually, Christian's charity is 22 in Troops, where he raises money and awareness for that as well. So there'll be 3 Christian McCaffrey jerseys being sold, auctioned off. One of the jerseys I signed will be sold and auctioned off. And then there'll be hats you can buy. There'll be food trucks available. There's going to be really a carnival-like atmosphere where we're raising money for the New Jersey Run for the Fallen from 5:30 to 7. Possible flyover during the national anthem. So it's going to be a big deal. And then there's a football game at 7 o'clock. So, I think we're asking all service members, veterans to line the field pregame for the national anthem. So it's something that we started this summer with head coach Lance Bailey and the team over at New Jersey Run for the Fallen. We're raising money for a great cause, and it's something that we're really proud of. Any information you guys want more on this, you could check out the Facebook event called the Military Appreciation Game, raising money for the Cape May County service members. So check that out. Again, any questions, just go to the Lower Cape May social media pages, and that will direct you there too. But again, it's the Military Appreciation Game honoring Cape May County service members.
Yeah, and we will also tweet out the flyer for the game for Friday night. 5:30 is when it all starts. The Military Appreciation Football Game. Lindenwold is at Lower Cape May, and you can be a part of that. And I'll tweet out that flyer information so that everybody can see that at 973 ESPN on Twitter. Now,
Thanks,
you
Mike.
guys open up. Yeah, man, obviously. Now, you guys, getting back. Now, McCaffrey's giving you a whole bunch of stuff. He's giving you interviews. He's giving you jerseys. Sounds like a pretty good dude.
He's a great guy, man. When I told him, I said, hey, Christian, we're doing this fundraiser at the high school where I coach at. Would you mind signing a couple jerseys? Because you want to bug a guy for a signature, right? You want to,
right? It's got to be like you're on his team, and you're like, "Can I get your autograph?"
Yeah, can I get your autograph? Because we're going to raise money for the New Jersey Run for the Fallen. It's 22 in Troops. That's where we got the theme from. And he was like, "Absolutely, I'll sign all 4." I said, "Well, can you sign 3? I'll sign 1." I don't know.
Who's getting more? Whose jersey's getting more of a?
I may have devalued the jersey with my signature, Mike. But I think the one thing I forgot to touch on too is that we'll be selling game jerseys too that aren't signed, so they'll be for sale. And all the so you can, they're really cool jerseys like Mike talked about. There'll be jerseys for sale. There'll be hats for sale. And then the one thing I really want to hit on is there's literally going to be a Black Hawk helicopter landing at Lower Cape May Regional High School. I mean, Brian Kniff with 98.7 The Coast, who will be covering the game live. You'll be able to watch the game live. We were on a call this morning, and he said, for those fans that go to a casual game every year, this is the game to go to. And I completely agree, a high school football game. But also, it's an opportunity if you don't even go to games and you're just a supporter of the military to go out, because there's a lot of action. How many Black Hawk helicopters are landing at a high school for a football game?
Right.
So it's kudos to everyone on our team, the committee, putting things together, the first responders that are part of the team put together. So it's going to be a tremendous event. 5:30 Friday at Lower Cape May Regional.
I'll tell you, going back to the game from Sunday, you guys give up 14. You made a lot of additions on defense this offseason. J.C. Horn was a guy that a lot of Eagles fans kind of were saying, oh, that could be a draft pick. Reddick coming over, he made an instant impact for your team. Thompson as well, no relation. Shaq Thompson, not Colin Thompson. He was all over the place in that game.
We have a tremendous defense. It was funny. I had some conversations with some coaches and guys on the team like a couple of weeks ago. And, we were frustrated from a day offensively we had in practice or whatever it was. And I remember one of the coaches saying, guys, we won't face many defenses like ours in the NFL. I think they're right up there with some of the bigger names. I really do. Premier pass rushers, Brian Burns is one of the most underrated players in the NFL. Hassan Reddick, you bring over, Shaq Thompson. You got big players like Jeremy Chin. He could arguably be Rookie of the Year last year if it wasn't for Chase Young and the emergence of the Redskins down the stretch. You have J.C. Horn, who is literally like 6'3". He's just about my size playing corner. I mean, he's absolutely massive. You mentioned how the Eagles fans wanted him. I mean, the guy, I got more texts on draft day about him coming to us than any other player I've ever got a text about ever, because he's just got that stature. His dad was Joe Horn, who played for the Saints, for those that don't know. So, yeah, a lot of, premier players and a really big defense that can run and hit. And you could see what they did. I think 6 sacks, multiple forced turnovers. So yeah, a lot of talent on the team. Offensively, things are starting to come together, and that will grow as well. So we want to play complementary football in Carolina, where offense helps the defense helps the offense. Special teams are involved. That's what the best teams do for 17 games.
So getting a chance to talk to someone who plays in the league is pretty cool, especially in the middle of the week. Someone like you, Colin, who, all right, you play the Jets in week 1, a lot of unknown. You guys don't know much about like them. They're a whole new, you guys are all feeling yourself out. Now you have something, but now you're getting ready for week 2. Kind of give our listeners some insight on what an NFL player is doing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because you're playing a Saints team that just kicked the crap out of Green Bay 38-3. But the mentality is like, we don't care what the score is or what happened. This is how we're getting ready. So take us inside of what's going on now in an NFL setting for a week 2 game.
Yeah, so my process does not change week to week. I'll tweak some things. I may handle how I'm lifting, what I'm doing each week. That may change how I'm feeling, but really the process, whether you win or lose, does not change. So on Wednesday, we're off Tuesdays in the NFL. You come in Monday after the game, you watch film, you lift, you recover, you do whatever that may be. I'm in the pool doing my recovery stuff. I get a lift. Then we watch film, and then you're home by, say, 5 o'clock. You're off Tuesday, which consists of maybe a massage, yoga, some sort of pool workout again, whatever it may be. Get away from the game. I have my podcast, so I do not for long media stuff on the off day. And then Wednesday rolls around, and that's usually your biggest work day of the week, Wednesday and Thursday. The pads are on. It is a first and second down practice where you're repping those situations. You're repping more of the run game stuff, maybe some goal line stuff, because the pads are on. So you get in, you have meetings right in the morning from 8:30 to 1:30. Then you have practice from 1:30 to 3:45. And then after you have, pretty much player-driven stuff that we do here. So we'll have meetings. You get a lift in like I did today, hopped in the shower. I'm on the radio with you, and then I'll go back and I'll be here till about 6:30. 7 watching film. So it's about a 12-hour day. I get in at 7, here till 7, and that's how it'll be tomorrow. And then that will be more of your third down day, your red zone day, where you're working those, intricate routes and the things that really at the end of the day, like, did you win third down? What were your third down percentage? Did you score touchdowns in the red zone instead of field goals? And, the kicking game, how that gets involved. And then you're sprinkling special teams in every day as well. And then Friday, you have like a half day, a quicker practice where you're just tightening things up. Saturday's a walkthrough, another half-day type situation, and then Sunday we play. So it just rips through, and you're just rolling on that wheel every week, like I said, and you just critique, little things that you feel like you need to do. You're watching your weight throughout the week. It's a whole thing. My meals are all planned out. It's a process, but it's something that I was able to kind of get down last year, and I'm going to try to make better this year.
Well, it's interesting because, as I mentioned, the team you're playing is now a division opponent, and how that kind of changes the dynamic of the preparation too, because this is a game that last week it's a non-conference game. This week in the division, and obviously they win impressively. So this becomes a much bigger week 2 feeling game than maybe if it's a non-conference game this early in the year. Would that be accurate?
Well, I'll say this. It's going to be probably less. Like, there was a lot of Jets fans at the game last week. A lot. More than I thought. I mean, there was some Jets chants. And, the Jets are my first NFL game and was like kind of a team I watched growing up. So, it was funny and kind of laugh when I heard that chant. There'll be a lot. It will be packed, right? It's the New Orleans Saints. We have a tough division, obviously, the Saints, Bucs, Atlanta. So, there's a lot of pride in Carolina for the Carolina Panthers. And I'm sure with the divisional opponent, it will continue to be packed. It was loud.
It's funny because I didn't tell you this. I was just in North Carolina 2 weeks ago. I was at the Outer Banks, right?
Yep.
So I was in Greenville. My girlfriend went to East Carolina. So your preseason game was on television there. It was like I guess your last preseason game. So that game's on TV, and I'm watching, and it's like, how far is Charlotte from Greenville? I mean, you don't realize how big, where we are. The Jets are 2 hours from us, and nobody cares. But in Greenville, Charlotte, and then Matt Rule came out and said, no, we're the Carolina Panthers. That means North Carolina and South Carolina. Like, he's really trying to expand that brand into a much different area code.
Yeah, it's definitely unique in the sense that actually I found this out this year. The Carolina Panther logo, our emblem, is actually, if you look at it, it's South Carolina, North Carolina drawn with just a little cat on top of it. It's very unique. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, it's good good knowledge. So
wait, what is it again?
It's the two states together. If you just drew a drawing of North Carolina and South Carolina and just put the panther face on it. I'm looking at it right now I'm in the media room here talking to you. So yeah, it's that's the whole thing here is we're North Carolina and South Carolina. Eventually, in about 2 years, in Rock Hill, South Carolina, 30 minutes south of Charlotte, where we're at now, will be the hub, will be the epicenter of the Carolina Panthers. The practice facility, everything will be there. And then the stadium will be up here. Now we're underneath the stadium. We're in the stadium as a facility. But like I said, in 2 years, we'll have our own massive, kind of like the Star in Dallas facility in Rock Hill, South Carolina.
Now, what I thought, now I'm imagining, okay, so does an NFL guy, you're playing, are you even paying attention to Monday Night Football? Are you watching the game or the Manning cast or nothing?
Well, so I wasn't watching anything, and my phone was blowing up about it. And I'm 50-50 on it. It just depends what's going on. If I have some friends that want to get dinner on the team or something, we'll go out to dinner on a Monday night. It's like kind of our off night. But my phone was blowing up. I have friends that are Ravens fans. Shout out to TK and the crew that watches the games at the Seaview on Monday nights, at Raven Haven. And so my phone was blowing up between the Ravens and then between the Manning cast. So I'm like, all right, I got to throw the Manning cast on, and that was fantastic. I like watching when college football season is coming to an end and they have the Final Four and they have the coaches' room and the coaches are talking about the X's and O's, because that's how I watch a game. I'm the worst guy to watch a game with because I just poo-poo whatever everyone says. Everyone's like, oh, the quarterback screwed up here. I'm like, well, the right tackle didn't make a block, so I don't know what you want the quarterback to do, So – that's
great though, because that was literally, the best part about it though was that they had Kelsey and Russell Wilson. These are guys who are actually playing now, critiquing what they're watching of teams that they're competing against.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like literally Russell's like, oh, here comes cover zero. I hope they're throwing this, because the Ravens are always bringing cover zero pressure. It's just literally man for man, and they're bringing more guys than you can protect, and they hope that, hey, you're not going to be able to make that throw, which Derek Carr made that throw at the end of the game. And Zay Jones, shout out to ECU, just had a walk-off. So, just tremendous. I think for a football fan that really wants to learn the game more and not be as casual, absolutely something to watch. I don't know how many Ravens fans or Raiders fans will watch it because they kind of want to watch the game as it goes. But, the Mannings are the best thing TV can offer. They really can. They're so exclusive. We were talking about that this week on Not For Long Media about Phil Mickelson's in that category. For golf, you can't get anything better. So, the Mannings are they're like Romo. You just can't put a price tag on them.
So as a tight end, Waller in that game, beast mode.
Unreal.
And the Eagles are playing Kittle this week. Did you remember last year when Kittle played the Eagles, he had 15 catches on 15 targets.
The guy's unbelievable.
How about that, dude?
What you're going to see this week with the Niners is a ton of just play action and just blocking tight ends and the running backs and motions and shifts everywhere, and these guys flying everywhere. They're going to run a zone and they're going to run a gap scheme and a counter play. It's just they just do it at the highest level with Shanahan, kind of like he had that Atlanta offense rolling a couple years ago with Matt Ryan. It doesn't matter who's at quarterback. Even though
The Eagles did you a favor. They beat one of your division teams, Atlanta.
Yes.
They look pretty bad, by the way.
Thank you, Eagles. Thank you,
They look
Eagles.
terrible. I'll give you some insight. They didn't look good.
Well, I'm sure I got to just worry about the defensive ends and linebackers. That's all I care about. I don't care about the team. I mean, I do, but
whoa, bro,
I really don't.
No joke. The Eagles' offensive line, Mailata is 6'8", 385 pounds. He was absolutely dominant. But getting Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson back, you lose one or two players on your offensive line, that just wrecks everything.
It doesn't. And that's the whole argument for me last year when I was involved with the Philly media and all these different things and coming at different quarterbacks and coming at different players. The Eagles' offensive line, when healthy, is one of the best, top 3 in the NFL. Can't argue against it. It's like fact. There's no like opinion. That's not even opinion based. It's just factual. Lane Johnson, Brooks, Kelsey, and then now with Jordan and the contract he signed. So, yeah, they're going to be the Eagles will have a great season because just like anybody, if you have offensive line health and great players, you're going to have a great season. So, yeah, you got the big boys up front got to stay healthy for you to have a great year.
I was just about to draft you on my fantasy team, and CBS had a glitch, and the whole thing got messed up, and then I forgot. You were in my queue.
I love it. Well, listen, for those that draft me, I appreciate it. I just hope you have 3 tight ends in front of me. I really do.
All right, this Friday night, 5:30, Lower Cape May, Lindenwold. It's Military Appreciation Football game. All sorts of opportunities for you to get some great prizes. The different jerseys, signed jerseys, Christian McCaffrey, Colin Thompson, and just going to be an amazing night in Lower Cape May. It is really a cool event. I'm going to tweet out this banner that you sent me, and good luck on Sunday. It's Carolina hosting Jameis Winston and the New Orleans Saints.
Appreciate you having me on, man. We're really excited to raise some money for the New Jersey Run for the Fallen. Check it out. Find us online. Find us on Facebook. And again, we appreciate you having us on and giving us the forum to do it. Thanks, Mike.
You tell Coach Bailey I said what's up.
I will, man. I will.
All right, man. Good to see you.
Talk soon.
Colin Thompson from the New Orleans Saints. From the Carolina Panthers, they take on the New Orleans Saints this Sunday. And, of course, Colin is one of the assistant coaches that helps out with the Lower Cape May Caper Tigers football program, and they're having that military appreciation night. I'll tweet out the details for those of you who want to help out or even check it out down in Irma on Friday night. All right, coming up, Jeff Kerr here on the Sports Bash Live. He going to talk a little NFL. We'll go around the NFC East. Big one in the NFC East tomorrow. How big is it? Find out coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports NFL writer, is going to join us. Covers the NFL, the Eagles, 97.3 ESPN. His appearance is brought to you by the expert solar team of New Jersey, EMT Solar, and Roofing and Solar Guardians. Start your solar journey today. Learn more by visiting espnsolar.com. Thanks to Colin Thompson from the Carolina Panthers. He's got that great event with Lower Cape May happening on Friday night. Right now, though, we're going to talk a little bit more NFL, NFC East. Jeff Kerr is here. We'll get his thoughts on why tomorrow night's game might be a big one in the NFC East there. Jeff, we got the Washington football team and the Giants. Someone's going to be 0-2. That makes tomorrow night's Thursday night game a pretty big one.
This is a bigger game for the New York Giants, I think, than Washington right now, Mike. And just because I don't think the Giants can afford to go 0-2. And they're banged up. You know, last year they started, I think it was, 1-5? I think they got their first win when they beat Washington. I think Joe Judge's first two career wins were against Washington, if I'm not mistaken. So they seem to have Washington's number. And this is a team they match up well against. I think this is a must-win game for the Giants. I think Washington can survive if they start 0-2. But I don't know if the Giants can.
Yeah, obviously the Giants, you tweeted out something about their offensive line. I said you're being kind. Is that their biggest issue? I mean, and is it a fixable one?
You know, it's a shame because the one thing Dave Gettleman and his old school football theories are good at is fixing offensive lines. He did it in Carolina. He did a heck of a job in Carolina. He's trying to do it in New York. He just can't get the players. Like, I like Andrew Thomas, and he's been terrible. And they keep making every excuse in the world for him. Like, you're the number 4 overall pick. You got to produce. And I think it's the coaching. I just don't think they're developing these guys over there. Like him, Bobby Hart, I think is over there. Will Hernandez is another one I thought would be better. They seem to draft good college players. They're just not developing in NFL guys. And I think that's ultimately their biggest problem. And it's leading to Daniel Jones getting killed and Daniel Jones fumbling the football.
Yeah, I liked Hernandez too. I mean, even Soldier, they brought over from New England. You thought he opted out last year. He was terrible last week. If they can't fix things there, because they went out and added some skill players. Like, you look at their skill players and people would say, I'd take those guys.
I love the Kenny Galladay signing for him. As soon as they signed him, I'm like, great signing. It's a shame that they can't block because I thought Kenny Galladay would be stud in that offense. Darius Slayton I like as a deep ball threat. Sterling Shepard's very reliable. Evan Ingram, everybody loves getting Evan Ingram for the Pro Bowl tight end thing, and I get it. He's not terrible. Like, he's a good pass catcher. They have skill position players. That's not the issue on offense. It is the coaching. It is the offensive line. And it's ultimately going to ruin Daniel Jones' career if it's not ruined already.
On the Washington side, let's flip to them real fast. Tell us a little bit, because Fitzpatrick is out. Does that mean, people thought, I was one of them and said, hey, people are overlooking Washington. You bring Fitzpatrick here, he's a legit guy. He might not be a Super Bowl winning type of quarterback, but he could get them to the playoffs, even though I don't think he's been to the playoffs as a starter. Tyler Heineke getting in there now. How does that change the dynamic for them at that position?
Here's a good one, Mike. You brought that up. Has he ever even been to the playoffs? I don't think
Fitzpatrick has ever been to a playoff game.
I don't think he has. I thought this would be the year. I think that is correct. I don't think he's ever been to the playoffs. So that's a shame. I mean, look, the offensive line did get him killed. I mean, the hip injury notwithstanding. But that was the question with this team. Could Ryan Fitzpatrick play a 17-game season? Well, we found out in the second quarter, week 1. No, he cannot. So it's good they signed Taylor Heineke to a 2-year deal, and they're going to roll with Taylor Heineke. And I think Taylor Heineke gives them an added dimension. I think he's a good short-term solution for them. We'll see if he's a long-term answer. I'm not saying he's going to be a franchise quarterback, but for the 2021 season, for 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks, or however long they're going to need him, they're going to find out if he's a fringe starter, if he's just a backup quarterback. I mean, he's paid like a pretty good number 2 quarterback. I actually kind of like the deal, but he's going to have an extra dimension for them because he can run the ball and he can scramble a little bit and make some plays. I honestly was really disappointed in Los Angeles, the Washington defensive line, because Los Angeles shut them down on Sunday. Shut them down. Rashad Slater completely owned Chase Young. Didn't allow pressure. Didn't allow sack. Didn't allow hurry. First career game. Left tackle. Welcome to the NFL, kid. Chase Young is a stud. he couldn't do anything off him. Montez Sweat couldn't do anything against Brian Bulaga on the other side. It's, I think that was a tough loss for Washington, but I think they'll survive because I think the Chargers are a really good football team.
I agree. I like the Chargers. That was a big win for them. They kept losing that game every year. Let's go to the other NFC East game, and that is obviously, before we get to Philadelphia, Dallas. They've got that Charger team. So this one's a pretty interesting game where Dallas now, they came off that game where people felt good about them. Now they got to go to Los Angeles and play a Charger team that's feeling good after a road win. Now they get to go home and open up that massive stadium for them. And, we're going to find out, I think, a little bit about Dallas. If after everybody praised them for how good they looked, we're going to see if they can scrap because this team will fight you.
Starting 2 games on the road is never easy for anybody. We'll find out this is a true road game for the Dallas Cowboys because I don't know how many Chargers fans there are in LA, and they're opening up SoFi Stadium to fans on Sunday. But I think they're getting a lot of fans there because of Justin Herbert, because of Brandon Staley, who was with the Rams and who Rams fans love to maybe they switch. Who knows? But this is going to be a tough game for the Dallas Cowboys. It really is because of the Chargers' offensive line, 2, because Justin Herbert, I think, can light up that secondary. And look, Dallas shouldn't have lost to Tampa Bay. They're the first team since the 1996 St. Louis Rams, and I may have brought this up Monday, to put up 450 yards of offense, have 4 takeaways on the road, and lose. That's hard to do. They should have beat Tampa Bay. They didn't. So now you got to regroup. I think you got to give the ball to Ezekiel Elliott a little bit more. Ezekiel Elliott can say whatever he wants. You don't know football, whatever. No, Zeke, here's what I do know. You were not a factor. I don't care about you and your pass blocking skills. You get paid an average of $16 million a year. I don't really care if you're a good pass blocker.
Yeah.
I know you're a good pass blocker. But you can't be getting on the fans because you have 4 carries for 10 yards or whatever he ended up with, and you were pretty much a non-factor on offense outside of pass blocking. If Dallas decides to throw the ball 57 times again, they're going to lose.
I asked that same question, Jeff. Can they sustain throwing 50-plus times? And look, their offensive line has issues now. I mean, they had the COVID issue in week 1, and well, now they have an injury issue in week 2. They didn't do very well sustaining their offensive line with injuries last year, much like Philadelphia.
Yeah, exactly. And, Dallas's offensive line isn't like Philadelphia's. It's not very good. I mean, there's a lot of potential there, obviously. I mean, Zach Martin, in my opinion, he's the best right guard in football. He's that good. Lyle Collins is hurt. I'm trying to think of what's the other. Oh, no, he's not hurt. He's got the suspension thing or whatever's going on.
5 games.
I like Connor McGovern again, but, he's okay. Like Tyron Smith, he's getting older. He's still a pretty good losing Travis Frederick at center last year or 2 years ago. I forget when it was now. That was killer for them. Their offensive line, they've always been a really good run-blocking offensive line, which is shocking to me that they don't run the ball more because I don't think they're that great of a pass-blocking offensive
line. You wonder how much they think Elliott has left in the tank.
Yeah, that's what I wonder. And if that's the case, why'd you pay him? Why'd you pay him that much money? Why don't you just do what you did with DeMarco Murray? Just say, hey, thanks for the 4 years. We took every tread out of your tire, go sign somewhere else, and be someone else's problem. And
DeMarcus Lawrence, by the way, hurt his foot at practice. There's another injury. They can't afford injuries on that side of the ball.
No, not against that offensive line. Justin Herbert will have all day to throw. Austin Eckler will have all day to catch. Keenan Allen will have all day to catch. Mike Williams will have all day to catch. Tell you what, Mike, this Chargers team, I'm starting to think playoffs with them. I know it's week 1, overreaction here, but
okay.
I like them going into this year. They did roll off 4 in a row last year to close the year out.
Yep, I don't have a problem with that. And John Clayton was on with us last week. He had them in as one of his 7 playoff teams. And I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So he has them in. I actually had them in this week as well. My ins were a wild card. Miami, Pittsburgh, Chargers is my 3rd team on the wild card. Let's look at the injury report for San Francisco. Came out a little while ago, and it is long. Armstead did not practice. Greenlaw, Kinlaw, Mosley, all did not practice. Limited, D. Ford, Marcel Harris. Armstead, Mosley, Kinlaw, Ford had a big game last week, too. That's a lot of bodies not working out today.
Yeah, and I happened to get in on Kyle Shanahan's press conference, and he pretty much explain the laundry list. And then they ask him Mosley's injuries week to week, and he's like, well, we'll see. So I'm not banking on him playing Sunday right now. That knee injury looks like it just keeps getting worse for him. D Ford was a shocker to me. Again, Armstead, I think they're kind of monitoring him a bit. It's going to be tough for the 49ers. I mean, I think this is why people think the Eagles have a shot to win this game. And yeah, you can call it an upset all you want, but the 49ers are beat up. That's what it is. The Eagles are just happening to get this team at the right time right now. Well, and last year, remember, one of their 4 wins came in San Francisco. One of the reasons they beat San Francisco is because they were really banged up. Now, San Francisco is, they already lost Mosher. Verrett is out as well, so they've already lost 2 guys injury. You wonder if that mindset starts to creep in of all these guys. Is good? Why us again? Yeah, you have to. And again, I don't know the answer to it. It's almost like the Eagles in the last couple of years. Why is this happening? Why is this happening to our team? And maybe they just have, they got to change something in there. Maybe eat different proteins, different foods. I don't know what the deal is. Like last year, they blamed a lot of them on like the MetLife Stadium turf. Well, you don't have that issue this year. So, and everybody's still getting hurt. And I know that was a question last week for Kyle Shanahan. You'll worry about playing on the Ford Field turf. He said, that's not an issue for us. And, it must have been because everybody got hurt again. Yeah. What did Shanahan, obviously the Eagles' defensive line is one of their strong suits. I like the 49er offensive line, but they allowed 6 pressures last week, which is the fewest in the NFL. So this is going to be a really interesting matchup. How did Kyle Shanahan see it? Well, for one, he's really, he said even back when he was in the NFC East with Washington, he said this defensive line has always been good. They always get after the quarterback. He said no matter who the coach is, he said Brandon Graham does this thing, Fletcher Cox does this thing. He gave a lot of credit to the Eagles' defensive line, when he was asked about him. He said, look, we're going to have to get rid of the ball. We're going to have to game plan for this team. He said, because they're a problem. He said they were a problem last year. He said they're an even bigger problem this year. He said they're well coached. He said he really had a lot of praise for the Eagles' defensive line. And here's another stat for you, Mike. The 49ers' defensive line had the most pressures in the league last week. Say again? The 49ers' defensive line had the most pressures in the league. Oh, their defense. I would say their offensive line gave up the least. Right. They had 9 quarterback hits last week against Detroit. Yep, I brought that up earlier today because I think one of the matchups of the week is Mailata versus Bosa. Oh my God, yeah. Talk about baptism by fire. I'm quoting Arthur Smith here, but you're really getting it with, in my opinion, one of the top 5 defensive ends in football already. And, this guy was rookie of the year. He had all these forced fumbles in 2019. Nick Bosa was a beast and towards ACL. Well, they're going to have to need Nick Bosa if Kinlaw and Armstead and these guys and D4 are out. They're going to need Nick Bosa to be Nick Bosa. And, he's not going to have that security blanket, those guys on the opposite side of the field or on the opposite side of the line or, in the middle of the field. They're going to need Nick Bosa to show up Sunday. Hey, Jeff, last year, Kittle had 15 catches on 15 targets. I was happy as a fantasy owner. Well, how do they slow him down this time? How do you slow down? Come on, Mr. Defensive Coordinator. What do you got? I mean, for me, I would just kind of let him catch the ball and make sure you tackle him as soon as he catches it. I wouldn't make him catch anything over 10 yards because that's where he can beat you. He can have all those catches and, keep him out of the end zone. I mean, that's honestly what you do with a guy like George Kittle. The best way to contain a guy like that, Mike, keep him on the line. And, make sure that they're not throwing the football as much and you're stopping the run. Then they have to go to the pass, and then you worry about covering George Kittle. But ultimately, he's like Travis Kelce. You just got to contain him. You can't stop him. Hey, today, Landon Dickerson was a full participant at practice. I'm interested to see how this whole plays out because the Eagles line was pretty good. But, man, at some point, I'm sure they're going to feel very compelled to get Dickerson some playing time. You have to wonder where he's going to play, though. Coming in for Jason Kelce? Coming in for Isaac Seumalo? He might just be on special teams or like the field goal team or something. He was on the field goal team today, I think. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to find out what they do with him. And I guess, honestly, he's just next man up in case someone gets hurt. Hopefully that's not the case. But it looks like he is going to be the Jason Kelce, Brandon Brooks replacement down the line. All right. Also, I see Shanahan today.
he noticed about the wide receivers. You know, he mentioned that the Charger receivers, how well coached they are, and he gives Sirianni a lot of credit for that. And I guess you can already see the difference in the Eagles wide receivers this season.
Yeah, you can. And, he said with the Chargers and the Eagles, overall, wherever Nick Sirianni goes, wide receivers are well coached. And he said a lot of that has to do with him. And again, he'll know Nick Sirianni from Adam and Eve. He said he talked to him on the phone once. That was pretty much his only conversation with him. But he is, he said the Eagles wide receivers that, there's something they're going to have to watch out for, especially with their quarterback situation. He ain't go into specifics on certain players like Devonta Smith or any of that. But I think overall as a group, he's a little concerned about, what his defense has to face on Sunday. And that's why I'm curious to hear what D'Amico Ryans thinks when he talks tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see how that all match. I think the matchup, and we'll dive a little deeper into the matchups back when you're back on Friday. But the Eagles' O-line will not have the same way they did Sunday against Atlanta. That's a significantly tougher task. And conversely, their defensive front should not dominate the game as much as they did on Sunday either.
No, they shouldn't. And again, if they can get the upper edge, the Eagles will win the game. But don't think the Eagles are going to go in there and get 20-plus pressures again. They're not going to. They're not going to, the only sack they allowed was technically on Jalen Hurts. It wasn't even on an offensive lineman. So, again.
Got to cut the penalties out.
Yeah, exactly. So, again, you can't have 14 penalties. You can't, Mike. That has to be – that's why I didn't give them an A+ or an A grade. I gave them an A- because I said, look, and I'll say this. I'll give a shout out to my high school football coach, David Dolis. We go on again by 50 points. We had 14 penalties. I was running 14 hills and doing 70 push-ups, five per penalty. So, again, you got to cut the penalties down, and I'm sure Nick Sirianni is well aware of that.
Tomorrow, of course, it's the Thursday night game right here on 97.3 ESPN. Sunday, we've got a great triple header. Eagles, 49ers, Dallas Chargers, Kansas City, Baltimore. We'll talk more about all those games Thursday and Friday. Jeff Kerr, CBS Sports, and I will be covering the Eagles, 49ers, 97.3 ESPN.com. All right, Jeff, take care, man.
And it sounds great, Mike. I already can't wait for Kansas City, Baltimore. Everybody's excited for the Eagles home opener. I'll be waiting all day for Sunday night.
Touche. Jeff Kerr. All right, everybody. There's Jeff as we get ready to wrap up a Wednesday show. Boy, it moves fast when the football season gets here. We just go boom, boom, boom. We get you all set up for all the games. And, of course, tomorrow night we got the Thursday night football game for you here on 97.3 ESPN. It's the football team and the G-Men, and you can hear it only on 97.3 ESPN. When we come back, we'll close out the show. Josh has Andy McNamara. Nope, Dave Weinberg on a Weinberg Wednesday. I keep thinking it's Thursday. Tomorrow, I'll give you the particulars for Thursday and Friday. I am out of the studio Thursday and Friday. I'll tell you where you can come on out and see the show live. All right, we'll give you the 5 to wrap up the show. Number 1, Dave Weinberg is up tonight on game night at 6:20. Now, a couple things. Dave Weinberg wrote an article for 97.3ESPN.com. He didn't even watch the Eagles game on Sunday. That's a terrible decision by him. He played golf and went to the Surfing Hall of Fame thing. I got to call him out on that, right? Is that fair? I mean, now apparently he was going to DVR the game, according to the article, but something happened. You'll have to ask him, what the heck happened? So he missed the game on Sunday. He didn't see after the most painful season, he missed the most entertaining game the Eagles have played in about 3 seasons. Shame on you, Dave Weinberg. You could read his story. He says golfing, surfing took precedence over Eagles game. That's over at 97.3ESPN.com. Number 2, you'll like this story. So I'm tweeting back and forth with Billy Schwein from the locker room on Sunday, right? And you know, Billy, the Eagles didn't play any preseason games. That's why they look sloppy. To which I say is ridiculous. I said, well, you know, the Falcons didn't play any preseason games either, right? So he says, I don't care about other teams, Mike. I only care about the Eagles. Right?
Yeah, that's Billy.
So he goes on to then give me that this guy, and this guy played in the preseason. I said, well, you just told me you don't care about other teams.
Right.
But he gives me Kyler Murray as one of the guys who played in the preseason. So if they could play, then the Eagles should play. Well, you know me. I'm going to fact check your ass. Kyler Murray played 9 snaps in the preseason. 9.
Right.
To which I said to Billy today, you're wrong again, Billy. And I sent him the screenshot. Kyler Murray only played 9 plays. He says, I watched the game. He played most of the first half. I said, wrong. He played 9 snaps. Read the article, Bill. And then I screenshot the article and sent it to him.
Right.
To which he says, I watched the game. He played what appeared to be more than 9 snaps.
So now we're changing the storyline.
I said, well, your eyes deceived you. According to the article, he played 9. To which he still wouldn't give in. He says, it seemed like more. Is this a classic Billy Schwein?
Classic. Vintage.
That is
Billy
a vintage Billy Schwein. I literally sent him the article. Not only did I send him the article with the amount of snaps, it told you his stats. I mean, he told you exactly. I will read verbatim what the article says.
Well, here's the problem. Key verbiage you just used here. There. If you read the article, Billy didn't read
my favorite thing
the
is,
article.
Though, right. My favorite thing is, though, the guy he gave me as the example of why the Eagles player needed to play preseason didn't even play in the preseason. It says the 3 drives he saw in his only exhibition showing resulted in 3 3-and-outs and 10 total yards, leaving many to question his readiness for the regular season. You know, Vegas has his odds as one of the top players for MVP.
MVP.
So Hurts didn't play in the preseason. He looked good. Murray didn't play in the preseason, although according to Schwein, he played about 3 quarters. So in Schwein's language, 3 quarters is the equivalent of about 9 snaps.
9 snaps, right.
Pete Thompson, if you're listening, you need to make sure you bring this up on the locker room Sunday. Don't let him off the hook. People need to fact check, and I'm here to be the fact checker. That's all I have tonight. Dave Weinberg, you're beat for not watching the Eagles game, although he has a great article about it over at 97.3ESPN.com. He's up with Josh tonight at 6:20. I'm back tomorrow. Have a great night, everybody.